Sleepy town settling for the night, where the Owens women live their lives. And it's about time that the back porch light comes on at that house down the street, at that house on Magnolia Street.
I just spilled water all over my desk. It's just one of those days.
You pulled a me.
I pulled a you.
Like some shit I would do.
It's just one of those things. What? Who sings that song?
Goes through. Monica. Remember that?
Hi.
Hello.
It was all over my phone, all over my books.
Oh, let's just take a breath. We got a lot to get through today.
Jazz hands. Super excited. Hey, witch, hey.
Hey, witch, hey.
We got a lot. There's one thing I want to touch on before we get started.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it last episode or the episode before, and I never did. And I want to talk about this goddamn book, this Wisteria Society for Lady Scoundrels that we talked about in episode 31. It's by India Holton. So I read this freaking book just as a reminder. It is about Cecilia Basilingswaite, whatever the fuck her name is, and she's an ideal Victorian lady. She's also a thief. I'm going to give you a summation here.
Okay.
So remember when you read it, it was like Victorian pirates, love story, thieves, lady scoundrels, and stuff like that. And somewhere on here, it said this guy, Captain Morvath, who possesses a Gothic abbey bristling with cannons and an unbridled hate for the world, intends to rid England of all its etc., etc., etc. Come to find out, this isn't really about like ship pirates. And I think I told you that it's the houses. They fly houses around.
What?
And the houses are rigged up with like, they just talk about them like they're like ships.
Well, do they fly like, do they have balloons attached to them, or they just like the houses are just magical and the houses just fly?
They're just magical. And Queen Victoria is in this. What? And they have the good old trope of enemies to lovers. And they have the trope of, oh no, there's only one bed. What are we going to do?
That sounds ridiculous.
I don't think I'd read it again.
I feel like I need to
it was cute. It was very like they kept talking about like Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, and it had like really good like classic literature references and things like that. But there's another book that I want to ask if people are reading. It's a series, and I've been talking to Justina on and off about this. And it's called the Touch of Darkness series, and it's Hades and Persephone.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I didn't know when I started this. I thought it was 3 books. It's not 3 books. It's 7 books.
Oh my.
I'm on number 2. And this shit is spicy. This stuff is like Daddy Hades.
Is it like, it's like mythology 50 Shades of mythology.
Exactly, but without the BDSM stuff.
50 Shades of Hades.
50 Shades of Hades.
I love it.
Dude, it's pretty dang good. I'm gonna say I got through the first book in like a day and a half, 2 days or something like that. So if anybody's reading this Scarlet St. Clair series, a Touch of Darkness, let me know because I want to talk about it. Or there's like a connected like online comic, a webtoon comic called Lore Olympus. You might have seen like on Pinterest. Have you ever seen the blue Hades with the pink Persephone cartoon?
I don't know.
It's kind of floating around out there. But anyway, it's kind of the same deal. He's Big Daddy Money, and she's like naive little 19-year-old Persephone getting out into the big world, and they fall in love. I know. So that's what I had to put out there. These 2 books. If anybody's reading those, please let me know. We'll chat about it.
Slide into Kristina's DMs.
It's like spicy. Well, I'm trying to like figure out, since you and I have trips coming up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what book I need to put on my Kindle, because I feel like if anybody knows this book, they're going to be like, oh, she's reading about dicks right now. So if it's on my Kindle, then they won't be able to see. But like even reading it, I'm like flushing.
Oh my God.
That's hot. Anyway.
That's hysterical.
So we're talking about frogs and toads today, but it was only last week we were so in like the autumnal spooky season feelings. It's so fucking hot today. It is so hot out. I'm not feeling spooky at all. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty spooky. The weather is getting, it's still hot here too in New Jersey, but it is the temperature is dropping gradually at like nighttime, so like
Oh,
we
that's
believe in
nice.
like the windows open or like having the back door open while we're eating dinner. Like it's just nice to let the breeze in a little bit.
Dude, that's so nice.
So
I love
yeah,
that. Love the
yeah,
windows open
it's
time of
been
year.
fire pit weather at night, so it's been nice.
That's
But yeah.
nice.
Yeah, but during the day it's like completely like opposite. Like, it's still
Horrid.
summertime. Yeah, it's still
Yeah.
summertime in the daytime. So
Ugh,
it's hot here too. I got my sundress on again. I've been rocking the sundresses all week.
I love it.
It's so hot.
Dude, it's supposed to be like 100 here on
Oh
Thursday.
my God. Yeah,
Now,
and when the time that you guys are listening to this, we're what, like mid-September now at this point? So
yeah,
like
it's
it's like
the
prime
15th.
spooky season. So, we're getting into the autumnal, all the feels right now. But like at the time of recording this, it is still, it's around the end of summer, so
It's hot.
it is a little harder to be completely entrusted into the autumn feels
Yeah.
yet anyway.
But
But
we're gonna pull that in. We're pulling that in for today because this is a fucking witchy ass topic.
yeah, it is a witchy ass topic. I guess we have like we're just going balls to the wall with the spooky stuff this month,
Yes.
leading up to our big 1 year Halloween anniversary.
I'm so stoked.
Very, very busy. We got a lot of good stuff cooking up for you guys. But I guess this is a meaty episode, so should we just dive right in? I know we have the Salem spiel. We could save that for later on. We'll tell everybody
Sure.
where
No,
we're gonna be at.
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's totally
Yeah.
totally fine.
All right.
I don't think we touch on it anywhere in here. Like as frogs, as familiars, like that has been known for a long time. But I didn't know that till I don't know, like 10 years ago. Like frogs were like a thing. There used to be a show. I don't know if it was the discovery of witches or something similar, but it
Hmm.
took place back in the Puritan day. And I just remember a scene of one of the witches like holding a frog to the inside of her thigh, and it was
It
like
must have been
bleeding off a
Salem.
teat.
I
That was
think it was
probably it. Do you
Salem.
remember that scene? Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's fucking nasty."
That was like the very first episode, I
I
think.
know.
Right?
Yeah. But
Yeah,
that was
that's
so
like
recent. Remember? I don't know when that came out.
definitely within the past 10 years, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
But like a while ago, definitely a while ago. I
Yeah.
remember watching that first episode and I was like, ooh, this is a really good show. And then we just stopped watching it after the first episode. We never
Yeah.
got back to it, but we'll get back to it. I always see it flipping through, like, I don't remember what platform it's on, but we'll find it
Same.
again.
Yeah. So frogs and toads today.
Yeah, I was
There you
just
go.
listening to in the car. There's a podcast called Salem the Podcast, and obviously they're based in Salem. Both of them are tour guides in Salem.
Sick.
So we could have probably actually sign up to take one of their tours if we wanted to.
Oh yeah.
But I was listening to their familiar episode today just to see what they had to say about anything. There wasn't too much toad stuff that they were talking about. They were talking about something about Giles Corey and turtles. He was like feeding turtles
I
from
like
his nipples
turtles.
or something like that. Yeah, yes, nothing about toads or frogs that popped out at me that I felt like I needed to like bring up here, but it was a fun episode.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's I want to meet them.
Yeah, check
They're
out
pod buds.
Salem the Podcast, the Familiars episode. That's what I was listening to this morning.
Sweet. Let's do it. We'll put that on the calendar.
Okay.
Do you want to do the honors?
Oh, I'm gonna rip the Band-Aid off here.
Get this ship rolling.
Show on the road. So we're gonna start off with a quote. The lay of a fenny snake in the cauldron boil and bake, eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog. Adder's fork and lineworm sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. Is there a syllable missing there?
Yeah, cadence seems a little off.
Yeah, something seems off there. I don't know.
I don't ever remember reading Macbeth.
Really?
Maybe high school.
Oh shit. Yeah, I definitely read it in high school. We had an English teacher named Miss Pecora. She was the most gothic, like emo Shakespearean teacher I've ever had in my life. Every year, I probably said this on this podcast before. Every year for Halloween, she would dress up as Roadkill. She was the same thing every year. Just Roadkill. Yeah. She would dress up as Roadkill every single year. But she was awesome. She was so cool. Like, she would take us to like poetry festivals at like Waterloo Village.
She sounds like goals.
She was awesome. Yeah, she was great.
Well, this one goes out to her.
This does go out to her. Yeah, we also read like I know we read a lot of Shakespeare in her class. She also took us to a Shakespearean like theater,
Oh,
which is like
wow.
really random. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, she was a lot of fun.
There we go. Well,
Yeah.
you did it beautifully.
I hope I did it justice.
So we're talking about frogs and toads today because they play a
Mhm.
huge part in the film and the books,
Yep.
right? So we're going to dive into the film first, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So this is probably one of the main motifs throughout the film, aside from the roses, because when we talked about the roses, that was a huge, like, pops up in a lot of different scenes too. And the frogs is like the same type of deal. And I kind of feel like the frogs and the frogs and the roses kind of have that symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, they're like the supporting characters that
Right.
just
And they
fly under
kind
the
of
radar.
go in tandem with each other. Like you
Mhm.
always see the frogs by the roses,
Mhm.
right? Not necessarily you don't always see roses by the frogs, because the roses popped up in different random scenes throughout the
Yes.
film. Roses, both the roses and the frogs, or toads, whatever you want to call them in the film, they both kind of represent the presence of Jimmy. I noticed that the very first, I guess, reference of toads or frogs in the film has nothing to do with like seeing a toad or a frog itself. It's something that one of the little girls says kind of like in passing, and if you don't pay attention, you kind of miss the reference. 27 minutes and 28 seconds into the film. This very first reference, it's the exterior shot of a house at dusk, and you can hear the conversation of what's going on inside the house. And Antonia's voice can be heard saying, "Kylie thinks that any man who marries us is gonna croak."
How did that become like synonymous with dying,
I
croaking,
don't know.
croaking, frog's death?
Good
You know,
question.
is it
Good
like the
question.
last breath, your death breath? What they call that?
Is there a word for that?
I don't know, but you know how people make like their last
Yeah.
exhale.
We'll have to dig into that and see if there's anything we could find. Yeah, so being that this is the very first reference to frogs in the film, do we think that this is some like kind of sneaky foreshadowing on the writer's part? Like, do you think, or do we think this is just like coincidental wordage and was unintentional? Do you think they meant for it to be associated with Jimmy's frogs?
I hope it's kind of both. I hope they were like, okay, this is going to be kind of cute. Nobody's going to pick this up. But also, I feel like, is this Kylie? Yeah, Kylie saying this?
Antonia's saying it.
Oh, Antonia is?
Yeah.
I feel like she heard somebody else say croak because the way she says it is like a word, like something you just learned, like a word of the day that you just learned. But she's so small, you know,
Yeah.
any man who's married is going to croak, you know? It's so cute. So I hope it's both.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. It would have been, cool if it, was kind of an accident and they didn't mean for it to happen. And then it was just like, oh, well, it makes perfect sense that the
Yeah.
rest of the movie, there's all these frogs everywhere. Also, one other thing. Do we think that this was some kind of manifestation on Antonia's part? Because if you notice what Antonia says, she says, "Kylie thinks that any man who marries us is gonna croak." So it might very well be possible that Kylie never even actually voiced this concern. So, like, do we think that Antonia maybe can read minds? Kind of like the same kind of connection that Sally and Jillian have when they, like,
Interesting.
touch their scars. And also, we've also talked about how Franny and Jet kind of balance each other out and have that same kind of relationship. Franny's the thinker, Jet's the vocalizer. So if these the same telepathic traits were passed down to Antonia and Kylie, perhaps this was something that Kylie was thinking that Antonia picked up on, and then maybe Antonia voiced it into existence, therefore manifesting these frogs and toads in their reality.
Cool. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Antonia's definitely the talker.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kylie, she's like, obviously, like, she's the thinker.
Intellectual.
We saw her kind of staring at that window, not really saying anything when she saw Jimmy's presence outside. Not really saying anything until, like, somebody asked her, like, what's going on? Like, what? But she was, like, very in her head about it, just kind of, like, observing, kind of from a distance, kind of taking it in, trying to figure out what the hell's going on before, she makes a stink about it.
I was going to say, I wonder if she would have said anything if Sally hadn't addressed her to ask her to go out there to do something.
Exactly. So, and also I know that Jillian didn't marry Jimmy because Kylie thinks that any man who marries them is gonna croak. But it's just weird that Antonia would say that, and then the family is seemingly plagued by amphibians croaking and ribbiting throughout the rest of the right?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. It's just bizarre to me. I know it's so far. I just like derailed with this theory. It's just like so far off. It might be a little far fetched, but I went spiraling. My mind just went.
It's a cute tie-in. No, I like it.
Yeah.
I would not have gotten that.
So that was the very, very first I guess you could call it, I don't know if you could call it an appearance, but it's referenced.
Cameo.
Yeah. So then at 39 minutes and 15 seconds, the next time frogs and toads make an appearance is when Sally and Jillian are about to do the resurrection spell on Jimmy. He's lying on the table. They have the grimoire open to the Spiritus page. The page header says Spiritus vis Spiritorum, and it kind of just repeats that about like 4 times, which is Latin for the force of spirits. And each line it repeats, the text gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And in the center of this page, there's a frog that's kind of sitting on top of what looks like bare tree branches. And I remember the first time I ever noticed
Or are
this.
those rose thorns?
Oh, they might be rose thorns. You might be right.
Oh shit.
I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. No, you're probably right. But the first time I ever noticed this frog on the page was when we were doing the research for the podcast, like last October. We were trying to pull topics, and I was like, we should definitely do frogs and toads, and like I'm going through every scene with a fine-tooth comb, trying to like pick out frogs, and it just flashes. Like in this scene, it just flashes. So it's hard to catch. If you miss it, it goes by fast. So I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense now. Like I always wondered why did all these frogs associated with Jimmy when, his spirit is coming back to haunt them? And then I was like, oh, well, the resurrection spell, they must have resurrected, or, brought about all of these toads and frogs as a result of this spell, obviously, because it's on the damn page. Like, it's got to have something to do with something. So it just made sense. So the directions that Sally is actually reading to the spell are as follows. So she says, lips pursed, emit wind over tongue in motion, teeth on edge, and this is when she starts doing the whole and like Jillian's like
raspberrying.
Yeah. And then like Sally, it's such a sisterly thing that Sally like corrects her. She's like, no, not like that. Like
Good enough.
Yeah. And then she continues, touch bounded smudge of blue sage with braided wheat straw, insert needles through the eyes of corpse.
In the eyes?
In the eye, yes, in the eye. And you can notice on the book page, it kind of has like these instructions kind of like in like a witchy kind of cursive. It's really cool.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah, very pretty page. Did Isis do this one?
She did. I have a link. We'll get there in shortly.
So they go to insert the needles. There's a loud clap of thunder. Sally gets the heebie-jeebies. Jillian suggests they wait for the aunts to attempt this, and Sally insists that Jimmy is not going to say fresh. Sally prompts Jillian to get her something white to write on top of the star outlined on Jimmy's chest. Jillian grabs some Ready Whip or Cool Whip. Sally continues the spell. Black as night, erase death from our sight. White as light, mighty Heqet, make it right. They keep repeating this until Jimmy's eyes open, even though they never even stuck the pins through them, which is like, right, what they had to do to do the spell. So, like, in essence, the spell never even was completed. So
that's what makes me think it's the belladonna.
Right. We don't know. So, so Jimmy opens his eyes and, he starts trying to strangle Jillian again. I want you to be my wife. And
Sally, you promised me that.
And Sally bangs him over the head with a frying pan, double-deading him. And in the next scene, we see the girls dig Jimmy a grave in the garden under the arbor in the pouring rain. Jillian thanks Sally for being her sister. Sally says, let's just put this all behind us. But little do they know, Jimmy's spirit has other plans. And then the girls walk back into the house, holding their shovels in the air, even though we clearly hear them dragging on the ground, which we talked about in our Goofs and Trivia episode. Go listen to that.
Dude, I really want to just do a scene by scene recreation, just the two of us, of like almost like a one-man show, but it's a two-woman show.
Oh my
costumes
God.
and everything, like bullshit costumes, and us do the whole movie.
Oh my God.
Like quick changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be hysterical.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's a couple replicas here. Is this the same page? Are these both the same?
They're not both the same, I don't think, but they're both the same creator.
Okay.
It looks like the second one listed they had on the Crackling Cauldron, and we'll link it. The other one Justina found on Pinterest through Flickr.
Yeah, it looks like the same person. Yeah, A. Granger, Audrey.
Yeah. The information toward the bottom, which is hard to read to begin with, is different. The one, what do you think? The one is a little easier to read than the other. And there's more text on one of them.
Yeah. I couldn't really read this. It just looks like I was gonna say, yeah, it looks like Latin to me. It is Latin. I
It's all Latin to
basically,
me.
but I
How
like
do you-
looked it up. I like tried to type it into Google and like nothing was coming up for these words. So I don't know if they're just made up.
How would you pronounce this creator's name? Andrea Granger?
Yeah.
All right. So we touched on these pages in our grimoire episode, right? And this, along with another page within Robin and Steven's creation, utilizes the repetition of text. I think they do that spiritum again somewhere. So I don't know, like you said, this might have been to just fill space. Maybe it was common findings in other magical books, but again, there's the repeat of this, the power of the spirits. The power of the spirits at the top, it gets smaller. In the center is the frog. And the text at the bottom is so difficult to make out because of all the fancy script.
Yeah.
But you don't go through art school without trying to teach yourself calligraphy. And in the version, the crackling cauldron version, it's a little easier to pick out some of the words. And with the help of Google Translate, which can be hit or miss. I get it. Yeah. But I think the creator knew what they were doing, because what I got from the fancy script at the bottom was Laetus que frequentum tu diminus pel talenti om. And Justina, I'm going to pop this in here, and you can probably say that better than I can. And that translates, you ready? Into happy because you often give us the skin of the dying man.
What? What does that mean?
That's what I got out of it. See where the red arrows are pointing on the page itself?
Yeah.
That is what I could get from there.
Holy shit. Okay, because I was searching what the text said on the first image over here on the left hand side, and I was like plugging that into Google and like nothing was coming up. I feel like it was just like gobbledygook. Like, you know how when you like, I guess in like Photoshop or whatever, when you're just like copying like just like copy, like text copy.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like gibberish.
Yeah.
That's what it probably was. I don't know. But do you think, all right, so you said this looks like the same artist basically. So this page on the left hand side, do you think this was possibly an earlier design and then she decided to refine her design and
kind of like I could see that for sure.
Refine the text and like even the image is a lot clearer. The graphics are just cleaner.
Yes.
I think she probably went back to the drawing board, refined it a little bit, and maybe made that text on the bottom actually mean something. But that's so weird. Happy because you often give us the skin of the dying man.
Yeah.
Like,
isn't that fucking baller?
So creepy.
There are 2 lines of Latin. I could not get the top one, and the bottom one was even hard because like some of the letters, upper and lowercase, have these fancy little swirly dids about them. But I eventually got it, and it was that letus quea frequenter tu diminus pel talenti om. I'm not Latin, but I thought that was so fucking cool. I was like, that makes sense. Makes sense to me.
Metal.
If that's what it is.
Yeah, skin of the dying man. So can we unpack that? Like, what do you think that means?
But then I go to the frog skin that was used for the Book of
the
Shadows.
grimoire.
You know how they're tied together, the skin.
Yes.
I don't know. I think that was so cool.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. We do have Isis's page. Let me open this up and see if there's any title or anything that she did differently. It's like a psychic connection spell. It seems like that you can do on a Samhain night.
Yeah.
Of a full moon. So check out Isis's recreations page. We'll link her again. Amazing stuff.
But hers calls for sweetgrass, something else, or sweetgrass and sage.
Beautiful.
And again, like I like how she put her own spin on it. Okay, so we'll move on to the next appearance of the frog. So this is at 47 minutes and 11 seconds. So right at the conclusion of the phone tree day scene, we see the exterior of the Owens house in the garden at night. The camera pans to the left toward the spot where Jimmy was buried, and as the camera is panning, we hear the slithery sound of something slithering through the grass. And we also get the first glimpse of the roses. We see the slimy figures of the toads crawling and moving through the grass as we hear the aunts begin to recite the witch's poem from Macbeth. But they put their own little spin on it. Do you want to do the honors on this one since I read it the first time?
Sure. We could go back and forth.
Oh, okay.
Like the aunts do. I am newt and toe of frog.
Wool of bat and tongue of dog.
Adder's fork and blind worm's sting.
Barbados lime is just the thing.
Cracked salt like a sailor's stubble.
Flip the switch and let the cauldron bubble. Time for midnight margaritas. Yeah, so we have midnight margaritas, that whole awesome scene. They're doing some round the table drunken silly banter and a reprise of You Were Always on My Mind by a very drunk Jet and Franny. Jillian smashes the bottle in the sink. The aunts demand to know what's going on because Frances distinctly smells bullshit. The broom falls, the aunts get up and leave. After the scene concludes, we get another exterior shot of the roses on the arbor. The camera starts low toward not the ground, but kind of like mid on the arbor, and as it pans up toward the top of the arbor, you got to pay attention because you can see the silhouette of a tiny little frog hopping toward the left of the screen. And the camera pans up and we see a single petal, which I never noticed before. A single petal from one of the roses falls to the ground. Have you ever noticed that before?
No, I never noticed that.
All right, so yeah, that's just a very quick little, visual, nothing really much happening there, but every so often in between scenes, it's like a nice little transition that we see the motif of the frogs kind of like just there. They're hovering, they're there, they're kind of peppered in between each scene just to kind of remind you of its presence. That's, we just know something's going to happen and the shit's going to hit the fan. What's going on with these frogs?
Yeah, this omen is here. It's here. It's quiet, but it's not quiet.
Right.
You can hear it everywhere, especially in the summertime or springtime. I guess they're in spring.
Yeah.
Like frogs are just fucking everywhere, but you can almost never see them.
Right.
And they're singing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like crickets, right? You never see them, but if they were if the whole species was wiped off the earth, it'd be very quiet. It would be very quiet at night. Wouldn't it be so creepy without them?
That's my favorite noise.
Me too.
But it's also like Jimmy. He's there, but you can't see him.
Right.
What were we calling him last time? Spooky eyes. Spooky eyes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be so quiet without them. But if I saw one in real life, I don't like seeing them because they creep me out. But
the crickets creep you out?
Little Jimimies, yeah. Little Jiminy crickets creep me out. Dude,
Jiminy crickets.
One time when I was still living at my parents' house, there was a cricket that was like stuck under the dishwasher and it would just it wouldn't come out. And every time we would go to sleep at night, it was like, because it's nighttime, it would start
popping
singing.
off.
Yeah, it was just like having its own little disco party down there, and we're like, oh my God, this thing needs to shut the fuck up. We couldn't sleep for like a week because this thing was just under the dishwasher, just raving.
Yeah.
But yeah, we finally got it out. I think my mom scooted it out the front door with a
We had one too in our house in California. We could not find, and it was under the stairs for a long time. And dude, that's a fucking pain. They're so loud when they're in your house. They're so loud.
Yeah, because it just reverbs throughout the halls, like at nighttime when everybody's sleeping. Yeah. I should put that to like a dance beat and just we'll throw it up on the Patreon if I can make that happen. All right, so about an hour and 12 minutes and 50 seconds into the film, this is the scene where Gary comes over to question Sally, but he ends up staying for breakfast. Jillian and Kylie make the banishing syrup. Go listen to our Nigella episode. And however, Kylie and Antonia notice that Gary has a lot of traits awfully similar to the ones that they found in their mom's journal from when she was little. So they throw the banishing syrup off the cliff into the water. Jillian chases after the girls all the way to the water to try to stop them. Sally and Gary start going toward them, but they kind of hang back and just laugh at the girls, saying, Sally says, I guess they didn't want to eat that. The camera switches back to the shot of Jillian shaking her head, annoyed at what the girls just did. And did you notice that she starts coughing here? As if something's stuck in her throat. And
something stuck in her throat. It made me think of Satine. She's coughing up blood from Moulin Rouge.
Got the consumption. But no, it's not the consumption. It's actually she's tied to Jimmy's spirit at this point, unknowingly, because nothing has really happened at this point yet, right?
Right.
But this is kind of when the symptoms start of she's kind of having the same symptoms as Jimmy's, I guess, his spirit.
Yeah. And the night before, she's woken up out of a sleep.
That's right.
Right. And she goes to the door and it's windy out and the doors fly out of her hand. She says, Jimmy, is that you?
She's like, go away.
Yeah. And then she closes and that could have been her letting him in the house. Because she said his name. But she told him to go away. So I don't know. I'm just trying to connect loose ends.
Yeah.
But it could be.
I just thought it was so, I never like sometimes like I think I've noticed her coughing, but I was always like, oh, why would she be coughing? That's weird. The very next cut, we see the toad doing the having that same kind of reaction, like "Bleh, bleh," like
Oh,
trying to cough something up, right?
yeah.
Like something was stuck in its throat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like this like deep squelching sound. And Sally and Gary are like right behind this toad, and they're like, what the hell is going on with this toad? So they move closer because they're intrigued now. Jillian sees it at this point, and she takes her sunglasses off in disbelief, and the toad continues to gag. Sally and Gary get closer before the toad bursts up Jimmy's ring. Jillian tries to play it off as her jewelry and says, oh wow, I've been looking everywhere for this. But Gary picks up the ring in his handkerchief before Jillian can grab it, and Jillian insists this is the toad's, quote, party trick, and tries to get Sally to agree with her. If you notice, Sally, she's kind of like quiet this whole scene. She like doesn't really know how to react. Gary sarcastically mirrors Jillian. Oh, it's your ring, is it? Jillian's like, yeah, can I have it back, please? Gary calls him out. What do you two think you're playing at here? And Jillian continues to play stupid and says, what do you mean? Sally's quiet this entire time. Gary looks at Sally, insists they better get themselves a damn good lawyer and don't even think about leaving town. The scene ends with Gary asking, and what was in that syrup? And then he walks away.
I think in this scene, because Sally's not saying anything, right? But the camera does pan to her, and I think she has her hand up near her throat at the cut of that scene.
Do you think she was feeling those symptoms too? Like that something welling up in her throat? Like, because she could feel Jillian's pain.
Right.
So do you think she was feeling, so in essence, Jillian was feeling Jimmy, and then Sally was feeling Jillian feeling Jimmy?
Yeah, yeah, I guess
like
so.
a weird like domino effect. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, could be. Okay, so before we dive into the next timestamp in the movie, I just want to say how excited I am to talk about these frogs finally. Because
You could. I know this has been on your list for.
They've been weighing on my mind since last October. Finally talking about
Here we are.
So this next scene is at 1 hour 27 minutes and 39 seconds, and this is when Sally comes back inside after the whole I wish for you too conversation with Gary. Jillian greets her to hug her, but then licks her face and tells her, I'm feeling very into sisters right now. Sally pulls away from her and then gives her the hook arm from hell, sending her flying into that cupboard of wool spindles. She falls to the floor, and Sally is standing with her fists ready to hit Jillian again if she needs to. The aunts come home and admit their instincts are getting a little rusty. And in the very next scene, Jillian is tied to a chair with both aunts by her side. Jet is patting the sweat from Jillian's forehead as if to cool a fever, and Frances is wringing water from a washcloth in a bowl to clean Jillian's face as she proclaims he's squatting inside her like a toad. And then there's only one other, I think the very last kind of reference or even the sight of the frogs is this next timestamp. This is 1 hour and 28 minutes and 50 seconds into the film. This is like basically the last 10-20 minutes of the film. So the exorcism preparation montage. So they're addressing the fireplace mantle with their candlesticks. They're taking the frames off the walls. Antonia and Kylie, they spin Jillian around in the recliner that she's tied to and start pushing it across the rug. And as she's being pushed, a trail of slimy wet toads emerge from the brown leather flap of the chair. And toward the end of this montage, Kylie and Antonia have a see-through garbage bag full of all the toads that they collected that came out from under Jillian's chair. They dump the toads over the white picket fence and back out into the garden where they belong, and then Kylie and Antonia scream yuck and ew as the slimy toads cascade out of the bag and writhing over one another as the sisters begin to hop back toward the house. And that is the very last even mention or visual appearance of the frogs at all, because shortly after that is when Jimmy is exorcised from Jillian, and then he turns to dust, he falls to the ground, they sweep him out to the garden. That's when they pour the lye over him to kind of keep him or disintegrate him at that point.
Amazing. You're really good at writing the movie descriptors.
I love it. It's so much fun.
Summing it up really well.
Yeah.
Putting them over the fence in the plastic bag always stuck out to me.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I don't know why that's so gross. Like a clear plastic bag and all these frogs are just like smushed on top of each other. But then all the people show up, all the women show up, and then she's like jumping up and down with the empty bag, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess the plastic bag, the clear plastic bag was probably like an aesthetic choice because think about it, if it was like a black plastic bag, like you wouldn't be able to see like visually see the toads in there and like how many were actually in there that were kind of just like festering up within like Jillian.
True. Yep. Even if
So
they chose like a
gross.
wicker basket or something
Yeah.
that was like more cottage core-y, it would
Yeah.
have still been hard to see because it's a nighttime scene and like
Right.
then the girls have to lift that shit over the fence. So
Yeah.
it
How do you
worked.
think that would have been? Like those little girls like just like dealing with all those slimy frogs having
I
to
know.
do
Did
that,
they like it? Did they not
right?
like it?
I'm curious. If
Yeah.
I wonder how many takes. I wonder how many takes that took them to dump those frogs over there. I wonder if it was like one and done, or if they had to keep like dealing with these gross frogs. And
I know they had a frog wrangler. Actually, in the commentary, they say that. I don't know if they say anything else about the frogs, but they had the frog wrangler.
they had a frog wrangler. Yeah,
Right.
nowadays they probably just do that shit in CGI.
I know. That's why practical magic stands the test of time.
Right.
All right. We're ready to get into the books.
Yes, there's a lot of book mentions.
Okay.
So for the book mentions, I kind of try to break it up between frogs and then also toads because they're two different things, frogs and toads. And we'll talk about that a little later on when we get into all the science and stuff. So I kind of tried to keep them separate. There is kind of one thing that I noticed between the frog mentions and the toad mentions. The frog mentions seem to be more along the lines of like nature mentions and like flora and fauna. And then the toad mentions are reserved for the more witchy kind of stuff.
Oh, good catch.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's
All
get
right.
into these. I'm excited to get.
All right. This first book is Magic Lessons. We're going to go chronologically and we're going to go frogs, toads, right?
Yep.
In the book. All right. So page 30, starting with frogs. Maria had never before questioned her situation. She was Hannah Owens's girl, but perhaps she was something more. She stalked through the reeds quickly before she had time to lose her nerve. Frogs splashing away from her and small fish darted into the depths. And then page 183. There was a rapping on Maria Owens's door the following night. It was late and dark, and the frogs were singing as they did each spring. It sounded for a moment as if Caden had returned, but when Maria woke, she saw that the flame in the fireplace burned black, and she knew there was evil outside. 195. The creature had adapted to this lake, eating frogs and leeches, but it had also been fed crusts of bread by Faith's hands, and so it had been tamed. 310. She had called to dark places such as this. The birds did not sing here and the frogs did not call, although there were hundreds of peepers on the banks of the stream. 366. Everyone else in the house was asleep. The peepers were trilling with their shivery song, for it was the time of year when everything comes alive, birds and bees and frogs. And then let's get into the toads.
Yeah.
So page 17 to 18. Whereas Hannah's grimoire had vellum pages and a wooden cover, the book she had fashioned for Maria was a true prize. A magical object in and of itself. It was made of real paper dearly bought from a printer in the village. The cover was black and bumpy and cool to the touch, unmistakably supernatural in nature, made from the most unusual material. Caden had led her to the shallows of a nearby pond where she had found a large toad floating on the calm surface, already cold and lifeless when Hannah knelt to hold it in her hands. For those who were uneducated, toads were full of evil magic, and witches were said to transform themselves into toads if need be. This toad's fate would be to guard a treasure trove of cures and remedies. As Hannah walked home in the fading dark, the toad's skin sparked with light. This made it clear that a grimoire formed from this creature would have its own power and would give strength to the written enchantments it bore. Any spell would be twice as potent. Hannah prepared the leather that very night, secretly and with great skill, salting the skin before stretching it on a wooden rack. Overnight, the toad leather grew twice as large as it had been, taking on the form of a square, which signified the mystical shape of the heart, combined with the human and the divine and representing the four elements, fire, earth, air, and water. It was an omen of power and heartbreak and love. Page 142. Once Faith found a toad, withered and close to death, but when she gently picked it up and held it in her palm, the creature revived. Panicked, the toad leapt from her hand and disappeared into the bramble bushes. Maria happened to see this event, and she was filled with a deep pride. Her daughter was a natural healer. Page 188. You had best hoped I'm not practiced in black magic, Maria told the men. Later, they would swear she had a smile on her face, and that she made the rain fall in torrents, and the toads came in masses through the mud, so that the earth itself moved beneath their feet. Page 386. It was there that Maria kept her grimoire in its black toadskin cover, a book that would belong to Faith upon her mother's death, so that she might learn magic all over again from the start, but not until she was a very old woman who had come to understand the importance of the rules. And then lastly, on 387, perhaps the grimoire was the reason toads collected in the garden, or perhaps they merely enjoyed the varieties of greens Maria grew: sorrel, dandelion, spinach, and chard.
So now we're gonna get into the next book, Rules of Magic. We're gonna start with the frogs again. So on page 26, Franny had stumbled upon some of the more disquieting ingredients in the pantry: the bloody heart of a dove, small frogs, a glass vial containing teeth, strands of hair to boil or burn depending on whether you wanted to call someone to you or send them away. Page 316. There were rumors of ancient fish living in the deepest parts of the lake, creatures that hadn't been seen for 100 years, but all Franny saw were frogs in the shallows and occasionally an eel slipping through the reeds. Page 335. She, talking about Franny, loved the garden, the bats flickering over the pine trees as they devoured insects, the frogs that came to sing in the spring. And then the only other mention of toad in the book, plus one more frog mention. So page 56 to 57. Franny noticed the book that was kept in the greenhouse had been brought outside. The fat, overstuffed tome reminded her of a black toad, for it was bound in a covering that resembled frog skin, cool to the touch. It was filled with deeply personal information, some too dangerous ever to repeat. If there were no family member to inherit it, it would be burned when the owner died, out of respect and according to tradition. Some called such a collection a book of shadows, others referred to it as a grimoire. By any name, it was a treasured text of magic, and was imbued with magical power. Writing itself was a magical act in which imagination altered reality and gave form to power. To this end, the book was the most powerful element of all. If it wasn't yours and you dared to touch it, your hand would likely burn for weeks. Small raised lumps would appear, causing a rash that was often impossible to cure.
On to practical magic. We're going to fly through these. They're doing good. So, frogs and practical magic on 128. It says, all the same, he's been making a mess of things. This is talking about Jimmy. Every time he breathes, horrid things come out of his mouth. Little green frogs, drops of blood, chocolates wrapped in pretty foil, but with poisonous centers that give off a foul odor each time he breaks one in half. He's wrecking things just by snapping his fingers. He's making things fall apart.
Yeah, so that was the only mention of frogs in practical magic. Everything else in practical magic is toads.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Oh, okay. I'll let you know if I need you to jump in. Cool.
Okay. Yep.
All right. So it says, they never heard a thing, but Sally could hear her sister running down the bluestone path and wept all that night and imagined she heard footsteps when nothing was moving outside but the garden toads. Page 46. The children on the playground all heard her. They took off running together as far away as possible from Antonia Owens, who might hex you if you did her wrong, and from her aunts, who might boil up garden toads and slip them into your stew, and from her mother, who was so angry and protective she might just freeze you in time, ensuring that you were forever trapped on the green grass at the age of 10 or 11. Page 54. There is always a time when Sally knows they have to leave. Each August, a night comes when she wakes from a deep sleep, and when she goes to the window, she sees that her daughters are out by themselves in the moonlight. There are toads between the cabbages and zinnias. There are green caterpillars munching at the leaves, preparing to turn into white moths that will fling themselves at screen windows and at the lights that burn brightly beside back doors. 136. The birds aren't singing this morning. It's too dark for that, but the humidity has brought the toads away from the creek behind the high school, and they have a sort of song, a deep humming that rises up through the sleepy neighborhood. The toads are crazy about Snickers, which teenagers sometimes throw at them at lunch hour. It's candy they're looking for as they wind along the neighborhood, hopping across the squishy lawns and through the pools of rainwater that have collected in the gutters. Less than a half an hour ago, the newspaper delivery boy joyfully biked over one of the largest toads, only to discover his bike was headed straight for a tree, which crumpled his front wheel and broke 2 bones in his left ankle and ensured that there'd be no more newspaper deliveries that day.
Oh, wow.
One of the toads from the creek is halfway across the lawn on the path toward the hedge of lilacs. Now that they're outside, both of the sisters feel cold. They feel the way they used to on winter days, when they would wrap themselves up in an old quilt in their aunt's parlor and watch the windows as ice formed inside the panels of glass. Just looking at the lilacs makes Sally's voice naturally drop. 138. The toads in the middle of the lawn have come closer. In all honesty, it's quite pretty, with smooth, watery skin and green eyes. It's watchful and patient, and that's more that can be said for most human beings. Today, Sally will follow the toad's example and will use patience as her weapon and her shield. She will go about her business. She'll vacuum and change the sheets on the beds, and all while she's doing these things, she'll really be waiting for Jillian and Kylie and Antonia to go out for the day. As soon as she's finally alone, Sally heads for the backyard. The toad is still there. It's been waiting right along with Sally. It settles more deeply into the grass when Sally goes to the garage for the hedge clippers. And it's there when she brings them over, along with the stepladder she uses whenever she wants to change light bulbs or search the top shelves of the pantry. 139. In the far section of the yard, only a few stumps will be left behind, so dark and knotty they'll be good for nothing other than a toad's home. 147. Once in a while, something casts a shadow across the lawn, but it's probably the toad who has taken up residence in the roots of the lilacs. They'd know if it was Jimmy, wouldn't they? They'd feel more threatened and much more vulnerable. No one is out there, Kylie has promised. He's gone. And maybe he really is, because Jillian isn't crying anymore, not even in her sleep, and those bruises he left on her arm have disappeared, and she's started dating Ben Fry. 158. Each time Jillian sits on a rock at the reservoir with a stopwatch to time Ben as he runs, the toads climb out of the mud, sing their deep, bloodless song, and by the time Ben has finished with his run, he has to step over a mass of damp, gray-green bodies in order to help Jillian down from her rock.
Do you think that's Jimmy keeping Ben from her?
Just let go.
Right?
Guys. 166 to 167. Kylie goes to sit by her bedroom window in search of cool, fresh air, and instead discovers a toad sitting on the sill. A crabapple tree grows just outside her window, a wretched specimen that hardly ever flowers. The toad must have found its way along the trunk and the limbs and leapt into her window. It's bigger than most of the toads you can find near the creek, and it's amazingly calm. It doesn't seem frightened, not even when Kylie lifts it and holds it in her hand. This toad reminds her of the one she and Antonia used to find in the aunt's garden each summer. They love cabbage and leaf lettuce and would hop after the girls, begging for treats. Sometimes Antonia and Kylie would take off running just to see how fast the toads could go. They'd race until they collapsed with laughter. And the dust between the rows of beans, no matter how far they'd gone, when they turned around, the toads would be right on their heels, eyes unblinking and wide. Kylie leaves the toad on her bed. But I think that's gross.
Yeah, it is gross.
Kylie leaves the toads on her bed and heads off to look for some lettuce. She feels guilty and foolish about having listened to Antonia all those times when they forced the toads to chase them. She's not that silly anymore. She's got more sense and a whole lot more compassion. Ooh, there's a lot. You want to go ahead?
Sure.
Okay.
So page 168. There's no lettuce in the refrigerator, so Kylie takes the first interesting edible she spies, half an uneaten Snickers that Jillian left to melt on the counter. Kylie's about to rush back upstairs, but when she turns, she sees that the toad has followed her. Too hungry to wait, Kylie guesses. She takes the toad in her hand and breaks off a tiny sliver of the candy bar. But then the oddest thing happens. When she goes to feed the toad, it opens its mouth and spits out a ring. Gee, Kylie laughs. Thanks. So yeah, nice little Easter egg there for the movie. Mm-hmm. The ring is heavy and cold when she holds it in her hand. The toad must have found it in the mud. Damp earth is caked over the band so thickly it's impossible for Kylie to see this gift for what it really is. If she stopped to examine it, if she held it up to the light and took a good look, she discovered that the silver has a strange purple tint. Drops of blood are hidden beneath the patina of dirt. If she hadn't been in such a hurry to get to Gideon's, if she realized what it was she had, she would have taken that ring out to the backyard and buried it beneath the lilacs where it belongs. Instead, Kylie goes ahead and tosses it into the little Fiesta-ware saucer on which her mother keeps a pathetic example of a cactus. She grabs the cake and pushes the screen door open with her hip, and as soon as she's outside, she leans to place the toad in the grass. There you go, she tells it, but the toad is still there, motionless on the lawn, when Kylie has already turned the corner onto the next block.
There you go.
Yeah. Like, get out of my house now, frog, toad, guy.
If you want to know more about cactuses, go listen to episode 13.
Right.
Our cactus episode.
So page 174, Antonia closes up the shop. Scott gives them a ride home through the dark, humid night. The toads have come out from the creek, and Scott has to swerve as he drives, and still he can't avoid hitting some of the creatures. Page 175. She, talking about Antonia, kisses him quickly, then carefully opens the car door so it won't creak as it usually does. There's a toad trapped beneath one of Scott's tires, and the air feels watery and green as the sisters run across the lawn, then sneak into the house. Page 233. Did either of you find a ring back here? Jillian asks. The girls are both shivering now, and the sky is black. You'd think it was midnight. You'd think it was impossible for the heavens to have ever been blue, like ink or robin's eggs, like the ribbons girls thread through their hair for luck. A toad brought one into the house, Kylie says. I forgot all about it. It was his. Jillian's voice doesn't even sound like her. This voice is too thick and sad, and much too distant. Jimmy's. Who's Jimmy? Antonia says. Like she's just clueless. Yeah. Page 265. Ben doesn't catch on to their anxiety any more than he notices the fiery scent rising from the pot on the stove. He must presume the smell emanates from some special cleaning fluid or detergent, or perhaps some small creature, a baby squirrel or an old toad, has curled up to die underneath the back doorstep. And then the last mention in Practical Magic is page 268. By tomorrow morning, the creek behind the high school will be deep as a river. Toads will have to scramble for higher ground. Children won't think twice about diving into the warm, murky water, even if they're dressed in their Sunday clothes and wearing their best pair of shoes. The last book here, we're on Book of Magic. So this is Frogs. So page 315. Something's happened in the village, he said. A red cloud of illness has settled over the roofs. He didn't need to say more. Ian had read about such things. Diseases called down in Egypt and Persia, rains of death, of toads and frogs, of snakes and illness, a rain of revenge. And that's when, what's his name? Tom Laughlin? Tom? Is that his name?
Yeah.
That's the only frog mentioned in Book of Magic, but toads, again, tons of toad stuff.
I'm ready.
Tons of it. So, page 27. Their treasured grimoire had been created in Essex, England, by Maria Owens' adopted mother, Hannah, a birthday gift when Maria was 10, old enough to study magic. The cover was the cool green-black skin of some strange leather that was said to be toad skin, a material that was both delicate and strong. Page 41. She ate pomegranates and olive oil, honey and cinnamon, and had even tried the ancient ritual of bringing a toad to sleep in her bed. All to no avail. So this was in reference to Jillian's challenges with fertility, but dude, does she like not have PTSD from all the frogs that she saw when being haunted by Jimmy? Like now she's got to take one to bed. Also, this old wives' tale about toads and fertility intrigued me, so I had to look this up. I couldn't find anything on bringing a toad to bed to increase fertility, but I did find this tidbit from rmccares.org, and this article is called "You Can Replace Your Pregnancy Test with a ... frog?"
What? All right.
So unbelievably, this one is true. Up until the 1950s, male and female frogs were used to test for pregnancy. So the frogs would be injected with a woman's urine, and if they were pregnant, visible eggs or sperm appeared.
Interesting. I thought I heard something similar, but you pee on the frog. Cool.
Yeah, so strange. All right, so page 80, Franny and Jet and their brother Vincent came to swim here when they were young, splashing each other and dissolving into laughter when the toads followed Franny, gathering round as if she were their queen. Page 110. In her dream, there had been toads in the shallows, some inky in color, others vermilion, still others a deep opalescent green. A pile of black stones were carefully arranged on the edge of the shore. The dream was a portent of what was to come, and perhaps it was best if Antonia kept its content to herself. Her mother and aunt were so distraught she couldn't bring herself to tell them that the drowned woman in her dream had red hair. So this is clearly a premonition of Franny and her self-sacrifice and breaking the curse, which I don't think Antonia at this point knows what that really means.
No, I don't think anybody knew. It was a surprise to everyone, wasn't it?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so sad.
Yeah. So page 241. When she'd gone to see Ian in prison, she'd taken the bus, and she hadn't traveled since. Anyway, it would do him good to walk and clear his head, although once he'd set off, he realized it was a season of the toads, and they were there, littering the road, calling to one another in the green heat of their mating season. The males puffed up and glowing faintly, paying no heed to the fact that they were sending out their mating call on the road, so that if a car passed by, many of them would be squashed. Go on, he said to the toads as he made his way.
Oh.
Page 241. They continued to ignore him, and in the end, he was the one who had to watch where he walked, stepping carefully over them, for it was bad luck to kill a toad. We get a little more into toad lore in Book of Magic, which is really freaking cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff coming up. All right, just wait for it. So
Okay.
also on page 241, Jillian heard the calling of the toads, an urgent chirping sound. Here, in the first Essex County, she felt as though she were an entirely different person, or maybe it was simply that after all this time, she finally knew who she was. Again, interesting that, like, these toads keep following her, even after Jimmy's been long and gone. Like, this poor woman cannot get
Right.
away from these damn toads. So, and she even, like, wants to use one, has it sleep in her bed so she can get pregnant. It's just all the toads.
Yep.
Page 241 to 242. Do you ever see anything strange when you're walking in the marsh? Jillian asked their driver, Matt, as he loaded their luggage into the taxi. We call it the Fens. You'll find water, miss, there among the weeds. It's a place where you need to be careful, otherwise you may drown and join the others who have. You'll find toads out there as well, especially at this time of year. That's what you're hearing now. They used to be hunted by those wishing to protect themselves from evil. They say there's a witch bone in every toad. Folks called the Toadmen delved into magic, and my great-grandfather was one of them. Matt took out a tin cough drop box and shook it. Jillian could hear something inside rattling around. The taxi driver lowered his voice. I've got my own witch bone. You cut it out of a toad and dry it in the sun, and you make sure to keep it close to your heart for protection and courage. I wouldn't walk through the woods without it. It protects against evil and gives you power, especially over horses and women.
Okay. All right, Matt.
What?
Get it.
So Jillian glared at him. When she spoke, her tone was dark. You think women and horses are in the same category? Not at all. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that men are fools who need all the help they can get no matter what or who they're dealing with. Every traveler used to carry a toad bone if they were lucky enough to be given one. Even ladies such as yourself. Matt continued to talk, but Jillian was no longer listening to him. Perhaps the girl in the Fens had been holding up a white sliver of a toad bone, one used to keep a person safe from all the evils of the world. Perhaps it was a message for Jillian. Be who you can be, not who others think you are. So I had to look this up because I was like, Toadman? What?
I don't remember this at all.
This is
What's a Toadman?
This is a real legend. So a toad, this is via Wikipedia, a Toadman or Toadman is someone in the folklore of the Fens of East Anglia and Lincolnshire who has made a deal with the devil which gives them control over horses. This is a real legend. Stories of toadmen seem to have been prevalent in the region during the interwar period of 1918 to 1938. The initiation ceremony, with certain regional variations, involved the initiate catching a male toad, hanging it from a thorn bush, or pegging it to an anthill until its bones had been picked clean, and then carrying the bones on their person until dried. The bones were then thrown into a running stream on a full moon at midnight, and all except one would be swept downstream. The remaining small fork-shaped bone, when recovered, would, through unspecified means, grant its holder psychic control over horses.
That's baller. That's really cool.
Isn't that crazy? So real quick, this link that I included right here, this is an Amazon listing for a book. This book is called Witchcraft and Secret Societies of Rural England, The Magic of Toadmen, Plow Witches, Mummers, and Bonesmen. There's a whole book on this shit.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So it explains their rights and, it explains a whole bunch of different stuff in their culture and all these folk tales and stuff. I think there's a little bit more in the Toadmen a little later on when we get into like magic and lore.
Okay.
But we'll move on. So page 333. Antonia dreamed that a toad had stopped in front of her on a grassy path. She was barefoot, frantically searching for her sister, but the toad was in her way. Go on, she told it. Move. In response, it burped up a silver key. What is with the toads burping up silver shit? That's crazy. Okay, so This book was written after the movie.
And after Practical Magic, where it burps it up also.
Right. So Alice was like, I guess I'll keep going with these frog burps burping up silver.
I gotta double down.
Gotta double down on the silver burping. So don't you understand anything? Someone said to her, and when she looked toward the lake, she saw Jet, young again, and a bit disappointed by how dense Antonia was. You already have everything you need. So wait, does she see Jet in the Fens? I don't remember where she saw. where that was.
Antonia dreamed. Oh shit,
Oh,
this
it was
isn't
a
a
dream.
dream.
Another dream.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, so page 342. There was the pond, so reedy and green. When she reached the shore, she knelt for a moment to catch her breath. A dozen toads sat in the grass. She could hear the song she and Jet had always turned to when Sally and Jillian were young, frightened by storms. Page 344. There were toads in the marshy shore that edged the water, their skins gleaming green, shimmering as the light fell over them. A few followed Franny as she walked through the ankle-deep mud. Page 346. The book was in Franny's hands, but it was the past, over and done with. There was no point holding on, and so she did what she was supposed to do. She let it go. The skin of the toad became itself again, more green than black, restored and made whole. That was magic. That was how they had lived their lives, how lucky they had been. Oh, beautiful world. Oh, love that never ended. They had been through it all together, and now they were together once more. Franny saw Jet floating in front of her, young again. My darling girl, who knew me better than anyone. The curse was dissolving. The toad Hannah Owens had found floating long ago, dead in the shallows, the one she had used to fashion the grimoire, was alive after all this time. It was a natterjack, most unusual of creatures, one that appeared in a beloved book, The Time Garden, which Franny had read to Sally and Jillian when they were children. She watched as it swam away. This was what it was meant to be. This was the path she had taken. This was how much she loved them and how well loved she felt in return. So, as we know, that's the, end of the book of magic, with the dispelling of the curse. Franny's the one, the martyr. Like, she takes one for the team, destroys the grimoire. The grimoire releases the frog skin, this natterjack that is now alive again, apparently.
What's a natterjack?
So, interesting tidbit about the natterjack. So, this is via Wikipedia. So, the natterjack toad, by the scientific name Epidalia calamita, is a toad native to sandy and heathland areas of Europe. Natterjacks live for up to 15 years and feed mainly on insects, get this, especially beetles.
So is the frog trying to protect them
I don't know.
by eating any beetle that comes?
I don't know. Well, if we think about the grimoire, did that have anything in it that was able to have them get these beetles? There was nothing really in there that dispelled the beetles or got the beetles away, right?
No, I guess not.
They just eat the beetles. I just thought that was an interesting connection that
Yeah.
the beetles specifically, it said they eat insects, but especially beetles. So it's all
Beetles.
connected. Crazy.
All connected.
So also I found this interesting. Populations of the natterjack frogs or toads extend through 17 European countries. In the UK, the toad is now almost completely confined to the coastal sites. The natterjack is the only species of toad native to Ireland. It's found in County Kerry, Dingle Peninsula, and Derrynane, and also in County Wexford, where it was also introduced to a dune site. In mainland Europe, particularly in the southern part of its range, it lives inland in a variety of habitats. So, from the sounds of this article, the natterjack is a species of frog strictly native to the UK. So my question is, how did the natterjacks become native to Maria's Island? Because that's where Franny dove into the lake, right? Was she
Well, the
Magnolia
grimoire was created in Essex by Hannah, so that makes perfect sense.
Right.
And
Okay.
the frog she found was
It turned back into the
back into the natterjack it was when
Got
she
it.
found it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Perfect. That makes perfect sense. There's a little bit more about the time garden, which we'll get into in a little bit. Just so fascinating how Alice is making all these connections and just is able to wrap it all in a nice little bow and make everything make sense and connected and all these little connections everywhere. It just blows my mind how detail oriented this woman is. We're almost done with the Book of Magic here. We have a few more mentions, and then before we take our break, I want to get into the Time Garden a little bit because that whole rabbit hole is so fascinating. So page 350, Ian delivered Franny to the bank of reeds. Sally knelt beside her, inconsolable, her face streaked with tears. She leaned down to place her ear to her aunt's chest. No heartbeat. There was no sound at all. It was so quiet here, even the toads were silent, and the beetles had stopped its dreadful clatter. Interesting that the toads ate the beetles, but now that the toads were silent, the beetles are all right, I don't need to fuck with them anymore.
Interesting.
Page 361. Since her return from England, Kylie's hair had remained densely black, worn in a waist-length braid. She left it that way to remind herself of the first Essex county where enchantments occurred and people went missing. It happened all the time. A woman would be found wandering in a desperate search for her beloved. A man would drink himself to death beneath a holly tree. A girl defied her parents and set off to have an adventure never to be heard from again. All were said to have been towed, placed, which also means to have been towed meant to be placed under a spell.
Interesting.
Right?
I didn't know that.
Kylie had been towed. She had overheard Margaret Wright assure her worried, bleary-eyed family that she would recover. She'd been on the wrong path, but she had returned to them, damaged, it was true, but returned all the same. Still, they must remember that those who had been towed were altered in some deep way that was irreversible, and their futures could be precarious if those around them weren't vigilant. No snakes, no stones, no nights spent alone for a good long while, no narcotics, no needles, no knives, no razors, no mirrors. Such individuals must be treated with kindness, even when they sulked and looked at the world with dread through unenchanted eyes. It was best not to mention the changes that might have occurred, the black hair, for instance, the vacant stares. Best to wrap your arms around the person who'd been missing, for an enchantment is a step out of ordinary life, and when that person returns, nothing is the same. Not her image in the mirror, not the lines across her palm. So Kylie at this point is pretty much, she was towed, right?
Towed.
Yeah. Page 365. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, but after her first cocktail a feeling of recklessness came over her, and after her third, a signature drink that Jillian had concocted called the Toad, which included crushed mint, vodka, grapefruit juice, and rosemary with a splash of rum, Sally got up on the bar of the tap room with Jillian for a hilarious chorus of Lady Gaga's Bad Romance.
Real quick, off the record, this is the drink we should have made.
That's what I was gonna say.
We should ask if he could make it for us.
Right.
Just for us.
Yeah, wait, so let's see. What is that? It is
mint, vodka, grapefruit juice, rosemary with a splash of rum.
That sounds really good.
I'm saying I would try it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be our signature drink, but I would love to try that and say we tried the Toad.
Yeah.
We tried it. We tried it in Salem. We tried the Toad in Salem.
Oh my God, I'm so stoked. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
And this is the last mention. This is on page 376. They were shivery with the cold when they climbed out onto the banks. They waited until they were mostly dry, then pulled on their clothes, which they'd hung on the low boughs of evergreens. Bertie was still asleep. There were crows in the branches of the trees, peering down at them. Toads gathered in the shallows, calling softly. What do you think it all means? Jillian asked. It means that no matter what, we will never be normal, Sally said cheerfully, with or without magic. Never, Jillian agreed.
So
yeah.
Sally is such a conundrum to me, because she's like, I don't want magic. I don't want magic. I don't want magic. Then at the very end, she's like, it means no matter what, we'll never be normal. She said cheerfully, with or without magic.
Right. Yeah. And then even at the end of that book, remember, even after she sacrificed, she cut her hair, she did all the sacrificing that she needed to do, but then she chose to be a learned witch.
Yeah.
Right?
She's kind of a poser in my book. Whatever.
Anyway.
So the Time Garden, is this an actual book?
Yeah. So again, before we take our break, I wanted to talk about this book, The Time Garden, the one about the Natterjacks that Franny read, or she used to read to Sally and Jillian when they were children. This is mentioned in Book of Magic, the one that we were just talking about, and I found some really interesting parallels between The Time Garden, which is a book written by Edward Eager in 1958. Some parallels between his book and Alice Hoffman's Practical Magic series. The Time Garden book is currently available online through the Internet Archive. Anybody can access it. Check it out if you like. I think it's a 300 something page book. It's not.
Oh, okay.
It seems like it's a children's book, and I guess it is, but it is, I think it's a novel.
Oh, wow.
That's what it sounds like. So the following is from the blog of a WordPress blogger called Jestress on her blog called Forgotten Stories Web. I think she does kind of like a synopsis for each one of these books. So there's actually 7 books in the Time Garden series. So the I think this is in order. So Half Magic is the first one, then Magic by the Lake, Knight's Castle, the Time Garden, Magic or Not, The Well-Wishers, and 7-Day Magic. So it's a series, but we're going to focus on the Time Garden for now. So the Time Garden takes place about a year after the events in the previous book in the series, which is A Knight's Castle. So Roger and Anne are excited when their father writes a play and announces that it will be performed in England. Unfortunately, their parents aren't planning to take the children to England with them because the trip there will be just business and focusing on getting their play together. If the play is a success, they plan to send for the children so they can do some sightseeing in England, but until then, the children will need to stay somewhere during the summer vacation. Their mother, Martha, calls her sister, Catherine, to see if the children can come visit their cousins, but it turns out Catherine is also looking for a place where Eliza and Jack can spend their summer. So doesn't this kind of remind you of like Jet, Franny, and Vincent's summer stay at Aunt Isabel's?
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah. So by coincidence, Catherine and her husband are also planning a business trip to Europe. So the adults talk it over, end up arranging for all 4 children to stay with Catherine's husband's great aunt, Mrs. Whiten, who lives in a house by the sea, not far from Boston. Could this be Maria's Island? Could this be Magnolia Street? Like, seeing the parallel, I'm seeing it. So the children don't find this prospect very exciting. It's kind of like when they were like, Franny, Jet, and Vincent were given the choice to go see Aunt Isabel. Like, they didn't seem very excited about it. It's kind of gives me the same kind of vibes. Yeah. So then the adults tell them that Mrs. Whiten writes children's books. Eliza is sure that she'll be trying to analyze them for inspiration for her stories, but Mrs. Whiten turns out to be better than they thought. She's unsentimental, something that Eliza appreciates, and her house is very nice. There's a pretty garden there and a staircase that leads right down to the beach. This is just this house just gives me Magnolia Street vibes, Aunt Isabel vibes. So one day when Mrs. Whiten sends them out to play in the garden, they find an old sundial that has a motto written on it, which says, anything can happen when you've all the time in the world. The children have had experience with magic before, so they begin to suspect that this garden isn't quite what it appears. And they're right. A strange toad-like creature called the Natterjack introduces himself to the children and tells them that it is a time garden. T-H-Y-M-E, time. Right? It's a time garden where there are many varieties of thyme growing. But it is also a time garden, T-I-M-E. He explains that he and his family had helped this garden grow since his grandfather's grandfather was brought here from England along with a shipment of primrose that they've put all of their magic into the garden and its plants. I'm seeing like a Samuel Diaz kind of parallel here, like
the movement of flora.
Yeah, to Magnolia Street and making this beautiful garden. If the children would like to visit another time, all they have to do is pluck a sprig of thyme and smell it. Jack, who has decided that he's too old for magic and is now only interested in girls, refuses to try it at first, denying the existence of magic, even in spite of the talking toad. The other children try it and find themselves at the same house during the time of the American Revolution. Everyone who sees them seems to think that they are the Whiten children of the time, and they end up participating in a ride very much like Paul Revere's riding through the countryside to alert people that the British are coming. At first, their ride is thrilling and successful, but if you know the other books in this series, you can guess that things are gonna go wrong at some point. So when the kids reach a tavern, they try to tell the drunken men inside that the British will be at Lexington soon, and they say that they don't care. As far as they're concerned, if the British are going to Lexington, let the guys in Lexington deal with it. The children are offended that they don't want to help and try to appeal their patriotism and fellowship with other Americans. It turns out they don't have much patriotism. The author of this says in parentheses, the United States isn't a separate country yet, so there's that. Or feelings of fellowship, because if their plan for the British are defeated, is basically, quote, every man for himself. Author also says, I understand this scene so much more now as an adult than I did when I read this as a kid. I think I've met their descendants. The children are angered at this mercenary attitude, and Anne accuses them of being pro-British. One of them insists that they're not because, quote, we ain't pro anything. Author says, yep, this is familiar. Some people just want to be contrary until there's something in it for them to gain. So it gets worse when the anti-British talk causes the Natterjack, in search of British patriotism, to cry, Rule Britannia. The drunks in the tavern then decide that the kids were trying to deceive them about the British coming because they're actually on the side of the British, trying to distract them from the British Army's real plans. When they discover that the voice actually came from a talking toad, they declare that it's witchcraft and decide to throw the children into the pond to see if they will float. So, an old test in witchcraft trials. But is that not a direct parallel to rules of magic and everything that those siblings went through with like being afraid of even going near the water, not wanting their loved ones to see them like for who they really are, like that they can float, like
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've just seen so many parallels from this book. So in a bizarre twist, they are saved by a band of attacking American Indians. The author says Native Americans ex machina. There's no real reason for a tribe of American Indians to be attacking at this particular moment, and the kids in the story seem to realize that. This incident, like many others in this series, is partly based on other books in classic children's literature, especially the works of E. Nesbit, the author's favorite children's author. A similar incident occurs to the children in E. Nesbit's Five Children and It, although under different circumstances. The author of the story frequently pokes fun at tropes of classic children's literature in his books and makes pop culture references from the 1950s. So the more old books you're familiar with, the more you'll see the jokes and, you know, kind of get the reference. Get the references. So in the grand tradition of cheesy 1950s Westerns, there's a vague description of the carnage of the attack with the requisite scalping and tomahawk fighting. So Anne is upset about the attack and covers her eyes, although Roger says he doesn't think this attack could have really occurred in real life because they would have heard about it if it were a real historical event. Anne worries that somehow they caused it by messing with history. So when the tribe is done tomahawking their attackers, the children are worried that they'll be next, but the Natterjack tells the children that they can escape by smelling the thyme again. So before we move on, I should point out here, in different books in this series, it's never entirely clear how much of the children's adventures occur in the real world or in some kind of magical alternate reality, or maybe in their own minds, or is this actually intentional? The children themselves don't seem to understand exactly how the magic works, like the other children in the series, or whether what happened to them was completely real or not. They debate about it periodically and wonder about the children that they replaced on this adventure and later ones as well. They never quite know if those children went somewhere else while they took their place, or if both sets of children were just living at the same adventure at the same time, just seeing it slightly different ways. So these time travel questions are fun to ponder, but are never really explained, just theorize. And I do have some time travel theories in regards to the Practical Magic series, but I'll save those for like another episode because it's a whole other episode. So we'll just fast forward a little bit here. They go through a lot of different experiences through time and the past, and they also want to know if they can like visit fictional time periods. So they actually end up visiting the Little Women book by Louisa May Alcott. The children get the idea to go visit their mothers in England. However, when they use the common time with their wish, they end up seeing their mothers in the past, not the present. So this is the point in the story where it kind of crosses over with their mother's magical adventure from another book in the series called Magic by the Lake. So it's kind of like a weird like timeline.
Yeah, different parallels.
So Eliza then gets the idea of using the time seeds to travel through time instead of using a full-grown plant. She and Jack end up traveling to England. However, they end up in the wrong period of history, and because the magical rules are broken, the rules of magical rules, they broke the rules. Everyone sees them as the modern children they really are and not as the people from the appropriate time period.
How did she break the rules? By using the seeds and not the plant?
I guess so, yeah. You're supposed to just sniff the plant, and they did an old switcheroo.
Got too cocky.
Yeah, exactly. There's a whole write-up on this. If anybody wants to read this, we'll link it in the show notes. But fascinating that there were like all like the tiny little parallels that Alice kind of like Alice obviously has read this book or these books, this entire series maybe, to put it in as an Easter egg in Book of Magic. Like Franny read these books to Sally and Jillian as kids, so obviously Franny and Jet and Vincent must have read these books as children, and obviously they've loved these books because they probably can relate because their lives sound very similar to the plot of this book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. There's another book I think Alice Hoffman has mentioned in the past as like an inspiration. She's like, I've always loved magical books that like magic just happens. in normal life. One of the books I read growing up was this. I don't remember what it was, but I remember reading, I think it was this last book. One of the books that Jet recommends to somebody is that book that Alice loved in her past. So it just is amazing that she just plucks this in, just very nice. And like the Natterjack. Like, isn't this too?
Yeah, and the Natterjack is a toad.
I've never heard of that in my life.
He's the pilot of this whole Time Garden book.
Ground control to Major Tom.
To Major Natterjack.
Major Natterjack. Have you read this series or any of these
haven't
books?
even heard about this until reading that one little line in Book of Magic where it was like, yeah, Franny read these to Jillian and Sally.
And there you went.
And I went down the rabbit hole.
Bye, Justina.
So yeah, it just made my mind go crazy. And I was like, why would she include this book? Like a random book. Why would she include that? And now I'm like, oh, it makes so much sense. It's because it's basically, there's the parallels. It blows my mind.
The illustrations in this book are really cool. I don't think every page is illustrated, but it's like pen and ink style, black and white style. The cover, I think, is, I'm just clicking on the link that you put in there. The cover is color. But the other illustrations, they're really pretty. Yeah. They're very simple, very clean.
It's just definitely has like a vintagey kind of style. It kind of reminded me of like, remember those old is that Scholastic? Does it say Scholastic on there? Like those old Pippi Longstocking books.
It is Scholastic, yeah.
Or like a Judy Blume book or something like that.
Yeah, it's probably like a young reader kind of book. You know, if it's that long. You know, they're probably getting this read to them, they're like 11, 10, 11. Like when they first come there, they're probably a perfect age for this kind of book.
There's so many books in this series.
But does it have Daddy Hades?
No, it does not have Daddy Hades. So yeah, I just thought I would share that because I just thought that was so fascinating. Not only does it have to do with the toads because of the Natterjack, but also like a lot of the happenings in the aunts' lives kind of line up with the plot of these weird books. I don't know.
If you guys have read any of these books, let us know if there's more parallels down the line within any of the other books. I think that would be cool find. Right. Let us know. MagnoliaStreetPodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Who is the artist? Do you know?
No, I don't know who the artist is. But really, really interesting connection. So you know how I said that those books kind of or like the cover illustrations reminded me of like the old Pippi Longstockings books?
Yeah.
So real weird. So when I was doing the research for this episode, I was like, when I thought of that, I was like, I'm kind of in the mood to watch Pippi Longstockings now. So I put it on, and have you ever seen the movie? Yeah. So you know how like in the beginning she's on the pirate ship with her dad, and her dad's like a sailor or whatever?
He is the pirate king, isn't he?
I never noticed the name of the ship before. Have you ever noticed the name of that ship?
No, what's the name?
You want to know the name of that ship? And this is really weird. The name of her dad's ship is the Hop Toad.
The Hop Toad.
Like we're doing an episode on frogs and toads, and like I was looking into a book that had nothing to do with Pippi Longstockings. And then I watched Pippi Longstockings and more freaking toads.
Is this real life?
Is this a simulation?
Dude, I'm starting to think it is. Nothing makes sense.
All right.
Daria Song is what comes up as an artist. The Time Garden by Daria Song. They also have coloring books.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, very pretty.
We'll link all this stuff in our show notes, guys, if you want to deep dive and, go down your own rabbit hole.
Your toad hole. Do toads live in holes?
What?
Do toads live in holes? Yeah, they live in the ground.
They live in like bogs or like in like marshes, right?
Don't they don't make a little like, I guess we're gonna find out in the next segment.
We're gonna find out all the science. So yeah,
gotta pay the troll toll to get into the toad's hole.
Get into the toad's hole.
Right.
Yeah. I don't want to veer too off topic today, but I would love to do an entire episode on this whole book series if we want to explore these further and just give it its own episode.
Have you been like listening? Because every time we say that, we're like, yes, we want to do like a side story about these, but I don't think we've been writing this shit down.
I have a little catalog in my brain.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Sag.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So we're gonna take a quick. Oh, you want to do the little breaky break? I've been talking too long.
Take a sip of water.
Okay.
With that whistle. All right. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about some science and answer those burning questions, like what is the difference between a frog and a toad? Also, the weird '80s toad licking trend that's making a comeback to the dismay of park rangers in the Sonoran Desert. Plus, magic, lore, myths, and witchery and pop culture when we return. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
Hey, little witches! The Stinas here. If you've been listening to our podcast for a while, you would know how much we love using the Practical Magic Inner Witch Oracle deck by Grounded by the Moon.
And now we want to share the magic of Grounded by the Moon with you, our listeners. Joseph Benitez Egerton, the creator behind Grounded by the Moon, would like to offer this very special 10% off discount to all who wish to experience the magic of his Practical Magic themed tarot and oracle decks.
But that's not all. He also creates other divination tools like tarot workbooks, deck bags and altar cloths, pendulum kits, oil blends, cleansing sprays, smoke wands, teas, and ritual kits.
And let's not forget about his custom handcrafted all-natural soy candles, where every candle is hand-poured and personally infused and charged under the light of the moon. They even come with a crystal.
And did we mention all of the ingredients in the candles are ethically sourced?
All of Joseph's offerings are just so magical. So go visit groundedbythemoon.com and use the coupon code Magnolia Magic for 10% off your entire order at checkout.
That's MAGNOLIA MAGIC. So get your discount today. Hey, we're the Stinas, and you're listening to Magnolia Street Podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We're excited to have you back for more toad stuff. So we're going to pull a card from the Practical Magic Inner Witch Oracle by Grounded by the Moon. Don't forget, you can go over there and get 10% off your entire order if you use our coupon code Magnolia Magic. I think it's
That's
still
the one.
right? Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah. So
Is there a toad card?
There is a toad card.
Cool.
So here it is. It's really cute. Look at this. Can you see that?
Oh, the baby.
It's so cute.
What does it say?
So the keyword on this card is awareness. Awareness and also surroundings. So the description on this card says, are you aware of all of the energy that surrounds you? It is time to take a look around and really see what's there before you. You need to confront any and all negative energies, both old and new. Awaken yourself and be more mindful of your environment. There's so much happening around you all the time. Take some notice of the synchronicities within your world. The toad has long been associated with witchcraft, thought to have magical powers, and viewed as evil. When a toad crosses your path, take it as a message. Use the power of this card, the affirmation, and a green candle to help open your awareness and become one with your surroundings. And the mantra on this card is, I am mindful of my environment.
In the Book of Magic, the last book, just somebody was riding a bike, or like the toad's gonna cross the street. Like they weren't minding their business. I don't know. Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. This line kind of struck a chord with me, where it says you need to confront any and all negative energies, both old and new. Take a look around and see what's there and what's been there. So that made me think of like Jillian and kind of brushing the real issues under the rug. You know, like she knows that Jimmy's, like, even after he's dead and buried, like she knows he's still lingering around, and she's going on through this movie like nothing's wrong. Right? Like
denial.
Everything is just honky fucking dory. And
I know that's his party trick, right, Sal? Oh my gosh, this poor girl. She's still so much like a little kid. Yeah. Even to the point of like little kids. Okay, unpopular opinion, little kids are the biggest gaslighters ever. Yeah.
Like no, that didn't happen. What are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
You're so right.
Like, I can't tell you how many times like I've called Molly out for something, and she would do it right in front of me. Like the most recent thing, I cleaned my car, right? And she would get in the car and she would put her feet up on the dashboard and leave footprints. And I would be like, Molly, stop. Don't do that. I just cleaned my car. What are you talking about? I didn't do that. Molly, you're the only person that sits in the front seat. Of course you did that. No, I didn't. I didn't do it. I'm like, don't you gaslight me. Like,
she had that camper up to 11.
yeah, I'm like, kids, they will try to get one over on you whenever they can. And
Absolutely.
Jillian is the same fucking way. Like,
I
even
like your connection better than mine.
even the point of like, yeah, Gary like calling them out, like, oh, it's not your ring, is it?
Oh, really? Oh,
really?
you dumb fuck.
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But like Sally does it too. Sally gaslights too when in this Midnight Margarita scene when the aunts, they know something's up. I smell the distinct smell of bullshit. Sally goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And then the broom falls and it's like, bitch, don't try to gaslight your aunts who have been on this planet for centuries.
Don't ignore it. And right before that Midnight Margarita scene is when we see the frog and the vines start coming out. Right before that. Yep.
Yeah, it always comes out in the wash.
Ooh,
So,
that gave me goosebumps.
own your shit, basically, is what the toad card is. It's like, own your shit. Take care of all the stuff you brushed under the rug, unbrush it, and unfuck yourself.
Because it's going to come to light.
Because it's
in
going
a
to
way you don't want it to.
It's going to bite you in the ass. Yeah, exactly.
It's going to possess your ass.
That's right. And then you got to do an exorcism, and then that's a whole other fucking can of
worms. Then you got to clean the house.
You got to make a pot of lye and fucking shit. I'm exhausted just talking about this. All right. Let's talk about some science and lore.
Yeah. We'll do some science first. So this is from the woodlandandtrust.org by Charlotte Varela. And this is, what is the difference between frogs and toads? I'm going to be honest with you, as a 33-year-old, 34-year-old woman, I have no idea.
Neither do I.
Okay. Oh, good. Oh,
we're going to learn something new together.
All right, so they say, you'd be forgiven for getting two of our most charismatic species, the frog and the toad, mixed up. These land and water-dwelling creatures begin to stir when spring rolls around, hopping out of hibernation and heading to their breeding pools to mate. But how do you tell them apart? While these little amphibians might look very similar at first glance, there are actually a plethora of key differences between them. So, first thing, how to tell the difference between a frog and a toad is their skin. If there was ever a telltale sign to indicate which amphibian you are looking at, it's the texture of their skin. Toads are warty looking, covered in little bumps and lumps, while frogs are sleek and smooth. Toads also virtually always have dry skin, whereas frogs look wet, even when they're out of water.
Interesting.
I didn't know.
Because if we're thinking about how Hannah made that book, like if toads have dry skin, she like had to like really, I guess, moisten it up to be able to stretch it out to make it a book binding, you know?
Do toads not live in water? Toads are dry land creatures. So why was that toad floating around in the water?
I don't know. It's a natterjack.
That's true. Is a natterjack? It's a toad. Yeah, that one's a toad.
Yeah.
Okay. Another way you can tell is by the location. If you've spotted an amphibian making its way along the pavement or ambling through some grass, chances are it's a toad. Toads cope much better with dry conditions than frogs, as their skin is more waterproof. Frogs lose moisture a lot more easily, and so are rarely seen too far away from water, which explains why they always look moist. Another way is their legs. Frogs have long legs, longer than their body and head, which are made for hopping. Toads, on the other hand, have much shorter legs and prefer crawling around rather than hopping. Their shape comes into play here. Frogs are lithe and athletic looking, whereas toads are somewhat squatty and dumpy. Their faces are different too. Frogs have pointed noses, while toads' noses are much broader. This is giving me alligator versus crocodile vibes. I'm not going to ever remember this.
Yeah.
Maybe the bumpiness and the smoothness, but all the rest of this, I'm not going to be looking that close at its face.
Right.
How they spawn is also another key indicator for which a species, this is what you're going to look at. Frog spawn is laid in gooey clumps. I always thought that was a verb.
What?
Is that a noun?
Frog spawn?
Frog spawn is laid in gooey clumps.
I guess like the eggs, right?
Yeah, whereas toad spawn floats in stringy lengths.
Ew.
So they're tadpoles as well. Like their adult counterparts, frog tadpoles are slimmer, whereas toad tadpoles are chunkier. Frog tadpoles are also covered in gold flecks, while toad tadpoles are plain black in color. So frogs are the largest group of amphibians. Frogs and toads make up the largest group of amphibians. Species in the order called Anura substantially outnumber those in the other two living orders of amphibians, Chordata, which
Oh,
are, I guess,
salamanders.
yeah, salamanders, and Gynomorphia.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that
Sicilian?
is
What the
either.
fuck? Wait, I'm gonna look that up. What the fuck's a Sicilian?
A Sicilian.
A Sicilian? I'm gonna look it up and it's just gonna be like a frog with my head on it.
Sicilian. Okay.
Oh, they're like water eels.
Ew.
Oh wait, no, this says they mostly live hidden in soil or stream beds.
I'm
They're
gonna look up a
found
picture real
in the
quick.
tropics of South and Central America, Africa, and Southern Asia. Yeah, they look like water eels. It's a snake, but this says that they live in soil. So I don't know.
That's fucking disgusting. I gotta get
think
this off my
gross.
screen. They're so gross.
Creepy.
They
yeah.
look like a little worm on steroids.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's keep going.
Okay.
As of August 2022, Anura had 7,486 of the 8,478 known amphibian species, according to the Amphibian Species of the World, a reference website from the American Museum of Natural History in New York. Frogs and toads are among the most diverse animal groups. Though they might be most famous for their croaking and jumping, these animals have a wide variety of unique traits and behaviors. Like many other animals, frogs and toads are suffering greatly from human-related threats, and many species face imminent extinction. Frog and toad are common names that don't mean much from a scientific perspective. Frog can be thought of as a more encompassing word, as it's the common name for the Anura order and used in the common names of most Anura species. Toad is used more selectively in the common names of certain species or groups. Amphibians with toad in their common name often have characteristics that are not typically thought of as frog-like. For example, toads usually live in drier habitats and have drier skin and shorter hind limbs than a typical frog, according to the Burke Museum in Seattle. However, all toads can be frogs. Okay.
See, I'm so confused.
It's like a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle can't be a square. I don't know.
What? My brain hurts. Okay. Whatever they say.
Frogs come in a variety of shapes, colors, and sizes. The largest frogs are Goliath frogs. Do you want to say that Latin name for me?
Conraua? Goliath? Conraua.
From Cameroon and the Equatorial Guinea. They can grow to be more than 1.1 feet, which is 34 centimeters long, and weigh a little over 7 pounds. Holy
What?
shit.
That's heavy.
According to a 2019 study published in the Journal of National History. So, Goliath frogs appear to use their great size to shift rocks weighing more than 4 pounds or 2 kilograms to build what they call nursery ponds that they clean and guard. The world's smallest known frog is a tiny species called, oh God,
Pedophrene amanuensis?
perfect, from Papua New Guinea, described in a 2012 study published in the journal PLOS 1. It's going to be linked if you want to check it out. This frog grows to an average length of 0.3 inches. Very tiny.
Yeah.
Making it the smallest known vertebrate on Earth. Frogs are famed for their fantastic jumping skills, but not all frogs hop. Waxy monkey tree frogs walk along branches, gripping them like monkeys do. These South American frogs secrete a natural opioid called dermorphin, which is many times stronger than morphine and has been used to create an illegal performance-enhancing drug for racing horses, according to the Wildlife Fund.
Yeah, dude, we're gonna get a little bit later, we're gonna get into I guess frogs that can be used for drug purposes.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's interesting.
My brain is like going faster than my mouth because I'm reading all this. Like, that's not right. That's not right.
It's not right.
Many frogs utilize camouflage, whether it is to stay hidden from predators or blend into the environment so prey don't notice them. For example, Vietnamese mossy frogs from Vietnam resemble clumps of moss. Poison dart frogs are also called the jewels of the rainforest because they come in various colors that warn predators they're toxic and shouldn't be eaten. However, even those bright colors can act as camouflage in a vibrant rainforest. Glass frogs have translucent green skin that makes their internal organs and even beating hearts visible to the human eye. They've evolved for predators to look straight through them. A 2020 case study published in the journal Proceedings of the Natural Academy of Sciences found that these frogs aren't truly transparent, but their camouflage is flexible.
That's crazy what nature can do.
No, dude, we're not even like tapping into like deep sea animals that are like just
I know.
terrifying. The frogs are always green, but appear to brighten and darken depending on the background, lead author James Burnett, the behavioral ecologist at McMaster University in Ontario, said in a statement at the time. This change in brightness makes the frogs a closer match to their immediate surroundings, which are predominantly made of green leaves. While there are thousands of known frog species, there are likely many more than scientists have yet found. For example, researchers described 6 new species in Mexico in April 2022. Each can fit comfortably on a thumbnail.
So tiny.
It's so small. The researchers noticed at the time that the frogs could represent the tip of a giant iceberg of unknown amphibians just in Mexico, Live Science previously reported.
Frogs are found on every continent except Antarctica. They need to be around water sources to reproduce, but their habitats are extremely varied otherwise. Poison dart frogs hop through the tropical rainforests of Central and South America, while northern leopard frogs inhabit much of North America's marshlands, brushlands, and other habitats, including farmland and golf courses, according to the University of Michigan's BioKids website. Some species live in highly specialized environments. For example, Vietnamese mossy frogs live in mossy flooded caves and the banks of Rocky Mountain streams around 2,300 to 3,300 feet above sea level, according to the Smithsonian's National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, desert rain frogs appear to live exclusively in the white sand dunes of Namibia and South America, burrowing into the sand during the day and feeding at night, according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Frogs have lungs, but they can also breathe through their skin by absorbing oxygen from water. They can still drown if their lungs fill with water if there's not enough oxygen in the water they're swimming in, according to the Burke Museum. So, question, if they can breathe through their skin, does that mean, in essence, the grimoire was a living entity?
Hey, like that book in the your movie Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus.
A blinkety blink. But our skin breathes also.
Weird.
Interesting that it was the Burke Museum and Susanna, Dr. Burke.
Oh my God. Weird.
How about that?
I wonder if there's any connection.
Catch me outside. How about that?
Catch me outside.
So frogs have a wide diet that includes insects, spiders, worms, slugs, larvae, and small fish. These amphibians play a vital role in the world's ecosystem by helping to keep insect populations under control, according to the San Diego Zoo. They catch prey using their quick, sticky tongues. A 2017 study published in the Journal of Royal Society Interface found that frogs' tongues can catch insects in 0.07 seconds, 5 times faster than the blink of a human eye. Some frogs seek out much larger prey than flies and slugs. For example, cane toads, which typically grow to 9 inches in length, scarf down small birds, mammals, and snakes with ease, as well as other amphibians, and even table scraps and pet food, according to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Their native range stretches from the Amazon basin in South America up to southern Texas. But humans have introduced cane toads elsewhere, and their insatiable appetites can be a problem for wildlife. They are an invasive species in areas such as Florida and Australia, where they compete with native amphibians and poisonous animals that try to feed on them, including pets. And in Australia's case, endangering species such as the Tasmanian devils, according to the San Diego Zoo.
Wow.
Aww.
So, as far as reproduction goes, frogs have many mating strategies, and scientists are still learning about these animals' sex lives. For most species, mature males initiate the breeding process by calling loudly to tell females that they are ready to mate, according to the Australian Museum. It's in Sydney. Females filled with eggs approach calling males and choose one to mate with, usually in water. So like hot tub sex. Fertilized eggs or frog spawn can incubate for anywhere between 48 hours and 23 days before hatching, depending on the species, according to the San Diego Zoo. Small, legless fish-like tadpoles emerge from the eggs and begin life feeding on algae. Tadpoles' transformation into mature frogs starts with the release of hormones from their thyroid glands, according to the book Developmental Biology. Over time, tadpoles grow legs, lose their tails, and emerge from the water capable of living on land. The word amphibian comes from the Greek word amphi and bios, which translate to both life because they live in water and on land. So, do you think that the frog is represented by the star card of the tarot because it's like got one foot on the land and one foot in the water?
Oh, I like
Have you
that.
noticed the star card
No,
in the
I've never
tarot?
noticed that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. That's fascinating. It's fascinating how like they could just like lose their tail, grow legs, and their whole like life process from the time that they're like a little egg to when they're able to finally live on the land. The whole transformation process that their bodies go through is bizarre to me.
It's like the number one thing you learn in science class of like not just evolution, but just like how you grow, how other
Right.
animals grow, and how an animal doesn't have to stay the same, like
Mhm.
including caterpillars and butterflies, that metamorphosis.
Yeah.
It's just like this can't be real life. Again, it's wild.
The beauty of nature.
So this might be where I get my answer earlier when I was like, do they live underground?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about hibernation real quick. Frogs are ectothermic or cold-blooded, like other amphibians, reptiles, and snakes. This means they can't regulate their own body temperature internally like many mammals do, and they rely on the external environment to stay warm, according to Frog Life, a conservation charity based in the UK. To survive winter in colder environments, frogs may go into a state of dormancy called brumation, underwater or under log piles. Brumation is similar to hibernation, except frogs can occasionally emerge from their dormant state to eat. Wood frogs have an even more extreme winter survival strategy to survive in the northern forests of Alaska and Canada. They allow ice to fill their abdominal cavities and encase their internal organs. In this state, wood frogs' hearts stop beating and they appear to be frozen solid, but they are still alive in a state of suspended animation. That's some Star Trek shit. The frogs survive because their livers produce glucose that prevents their cells from freezing. They begin to thaw out in spring, and at some point, though scientists aren't sure how, their hearts start beating again and they go on their way, according to the National Park Service. How crazy!
I am convinced that I am a frog now.
Are you a frog?
Because yes, I'm always freezing my ass off. I can't regulate my own body temperature. And in the winter, I go into dormancy and only come out to eat.
I'm
I
picturing
am
Jack
frog.
Nicholson in The Shining. You're just like frozen and like, don't talk to me right now.
I am a frog. All right, I'm glad we established that.
That's so funny.
All right, so poisonous frogs. Which ones are poisonous? So the bumps on amphibian skin, they're not warts, and people can't contract warts from handling these animals, which is one of the big myths. The myth that people can get warts from frogs likely stems from the wart-like appearance of the bumps, according to the Burke Museum. However, many frogs produce poisonous secretions that can irritate human skin or cause serious harm if ingested. For example, the most toxic poison dart frogs in the genus Phyllobates produce batrachotoxin, which disrupts the human body's nervous system and can cause paralysis, extreme pain, and even heart failure. As well as potential toxins, frogs carry bacteria and parasites, according to the Burke Museum.
Oh my
The
God.
secretions of frogs have played an important role in the development of human medicine. They're used, for example, to make painkillers and antibiotics. Furthermore, around 10% of physiology and medicine Nobel Prize winners used frogs as part of their research, according to Save the Frogs, an amphibian conservation charity based in California. A few frogs are venomous as well as poisonous. Poison is harmful if ingested, but animals are venomous if they inject their toxins. A 2015 study published in the journal Current Biology found that 2 Brazilian frog species possessed bony spines on their skulls that they could use like venomous fangs.
Oh my God.
These frogs, called Bruno's casque-headed frogs, they're also known, their scientific name, God, watch me try to pronounce this, Aparasphenodon? Aparasphenodon, Bruno, and Greening's frogs headbutt potential predators to stab them with the spines and transfer toxins, according to the Natural History Museum in London.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That's metal.
Yeah.
Sick. Okay.
Like headbutt each other.
All right. So amphibians are the most threatened group of vertebrates on Earth. 40% of the amphibian species assessed by the IUCN are at risk of extinction. I don't know why I said that so weird. This means that many frog species are declining and need help from humans if they are to survive, according to the IUCN SSC Amphibian Specialist Group. Some of the main threats facing amphibians are habitat loss and degradation, pollution, disease, invasive species, trade, and climate change. Frog extinction has disturbing impacts for humans. The amphibians are highly susceptible to environmental disturbances, making frog population a good indicator of the health of an environment, according to Save the Frogs. Therefore, the sheer number of amphibians at risk of extinction can be viewed as a wake-up call for the environmental damage that humans are causing to the planet.
It's kind of like what we were saying before. Like, if the frogs are gone and the crickets are gone, and like we don't see them around anymore, that we know we're fucked.
I know, just the amount of like stagnant water that like would be swarming with disgusting insects.
Right. Stuff that, all of these kinds of amphibians keep those at bay, right? Because that's their diet. So some additional resources for more information about how venomous frogs headbutt potential predators, in case you feel like that's something you need to know. There's a short YouTube video from the Natural History Museum in London. We will link that below. And for tips on how to help your local frogs, check out the National Wildlife Federation website. We'll also link that. And to learn more about different frog species, check out Frogs and Toads of the World, which I think that's a book or an article by Princeton University Press, and that was published in 2011. And this whole article that we read to you just now was originally written by Live Science contributor Alina Bradford and has since been updated. There you go.
They're so cute. I clicked on that first link, the National History Museum link of London. They're just so cute, so beautiful.
Have you ever had a frog growing up?
No, I've never had a frog. Have you?
Yeah, well, no, I've never had a frog, but we went to my aunt's house once, and not aunt, she's like a family friend, but she had like a little creek behind her house, and we would go play in the creek sometimes, and I found a salamander, and my parents actually let me keep it, and I put it in like a little, like one of those little tanks. I put some like gravel in there and like, some stuff. It was kicking for like maybe a couple weeks. My friend came over, picked it up by its tail. I'm like, you don't do that to amphibians or a reptile. They could shed that shit, and sure enough, the tail popped off. It didn't die, but it, did it as like a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
But like, it didn't, I don't think it lived too much longer after that. But
what a bitch.
Yeah, I was that kid. I used to play with salamanders, like frogs, like animals, bugs, forget it. But like animals, I was all right with animals.
Yeah. I was always saving birds and like chipmunks and shit like that. And my mom was like, stop it. Like, get this.
Are we the same person? Pretty sure we're the same person.
Anyway. You mentioned earlier getting high off of frogs.
Yes.
Talk about that, please.
I found this article. This is not the name of the article. I was speculating. Does toad licking make you trip balls?
Okay.
And I found this article from driveandvibin.com, because that's not a fucking stoner ass website. This article is called 1980s Toe Licking Fad Has Returned to National Parks. So apparently there was a fad in the 1980s where people were licking Sonoran desert toads because they liked how the toads made them feel. They'd often experience short and intense psychedelic and hallucinogenic effects after licking them. Some episodes would last upwards of 30 minutes before the toxin lost its effectiveness or wore off. And for those willing to risk their health and lick a frog, this was a highly unique experience. A little bit about the Sonoran desert toad. So this toad is approximately 7 inches or more in size. It's so large that it takes the crown as the largest toad in North America. They're typically in Arizona, New Mexico, California, and Mexico. As its name implies, you'll normally find it in or around the Sonoran Desert. While the toad's toxin is not enough to kill you, it could take out your dog or your cat or small mammal. The toad secretes a strong enough poison that it could easily kill most dogs, especially if they pick up the toad in their mouth. If you notice your dog pawing at its mouth, drooling, or displaying odd behavior, you should take them to a veterinarian as quickly as possible.
7 inches wide?
Yeah.
Dude, that's that wide.
That's huge.
Oh
yeah, it says
God.
It's the largest toad in North America.
Insane.
Yeah. So question though, like what is the main psychedelic chemical found in this Sonoran desert toad that makes people want to lick it? So this is 5-MeO-DMT. I don't know if I said that right.
DMT.
Yeah. So in the United States, it's an illegal substance. Law enforcement typically categorizes it as a Schedule 1 substance. However, people harvesting its venom have led it to becoming extinct in many states. There's been very little research on the effectiveness of the chemical. However, some studies have shown that those taking 5-MeO-DMT often report higher levels of satisfaction with life and lower levels of anxiety and depression. So basically marijuana. Just smoke marijuana. Don't go licking toads. Don't fucking go licking toads.
I don't know anything about drugs, but I thought like DMT was like, am I thinking about like a group, a rapper, or is that a drug?
Are you thinking of DMX?
I guess. I have no idea. DMT substance. Okay, no, including. Okay, no, I was thinking of everything.
Okay, all right.
Fuck what I said.
Is this 5-MeO-DMT safe for humans? So in general, it is safe in the correct dosage. It has intense short-term experiences for those who partake in it. There are no widespread occurrences of people becoming gravely ill due to it. In addition, some of the most prominent medical researchers in the industry are researching its effects on human behavior. They're looking at the long-term therapeutic effects it can have on individuals struggling with anxiety and depression.
So it's like microdosing shrooms.
Yeah, basically. But like, there's so many other things you can use for anxiety and depression.
Don't go licking the frogs.
Don't go licking frogs. Yeah, and it's illegal. So yeah, don't.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
Don't fuck with them because it's illegal to do that because they're becoming extinct because people would kill them specifically for their effects. Like they would kill them for their skin, dry it, powder it, and then smoke it. Apparently.
Oh no!
No. They're going extinct because of those kinds of assholes.
Wow.
So where are the Sonoran desert toads found? You can find the Sonoran desert toads in extreme southeast California, Arizona, southern New Mexico, and northern Mexico, and you'll typically find them in bush mesquite lowlands and other thick grasslands. However, they also live around groves of sycamore, oak, and walnut trees throughout forests in Mexico. And then should you avoid the Sonoran desert toad? While the Sonoran desert toad poses little risk to humans, it's not a good idea to go touching, kissing, or licking these toads. The only way you'll find your Prince Charming by putting your lips on a toad is if you end up in the hospital and form a connection with the nurse or doctor.
Oh.
Give them distance and keep your pets away from them. They are a greater risk than you are, and the consequences can be tragic. So yeah, again, if you're looking for a remedy for anxiety, depression, there's many other things.
They're really cute. I think they're adorable. I think frogs are adorable.
They are cute. And then there's just one other thing about these toads. According to NPR.org, in an article titled "The National Park Service Wants Humans to Stop Licking This Toad" by author Juliana Kim, she warns, the National Park Services has added tongue contact with the Sonoran desert toad among its various warnings for park visitors. As we say with most things you come across in a national park, whether it be a banana slug, unfamiliar mushroom, or a large toad with glowing eyes in the dead of the night, like the picture you just sent me, please refrain from licking, the agency wrote on Facebook this past week. In recent years, smoking the amphibian's secretions has grown in popularity, so much so that the species is even considered threatened, at least in New Mexico, due to collectors that want to use the animal for drug use, which is what I was saying before, according to the state's Department of Game and Fish. A number of public figures have reported experimenting with the toad's extracted toxins. Boxing legend Mike Tyson has spoken about it, and some researchers have even began to study it for its potential therapeutic benefits. President Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has written about using 5-MeO-DMT therapy as a form of addiction treatment. The U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration considers 5-MeO-DMT as a Schedule I drug, which you said before, meaning it's currently not accepted for medical use and has high potential for abuse. So there you go.
Is there a synthetic version of this 5-MeO-DMT?
I believe that they do have a synthetic form of that version.
Leave the frogs out of it. Leave the frogs alone.
You don't need the frogs. Let them be. Let them hippity hop around, and they're just doing their thing.
They're so
and then
so
someone
cute.
comes along and licks them. What?
Ugh, Don't do that. I know.
Yeah.
I'm always afraid of my dog because like sometimes they'll be right at the bottom of our back stairs where I let him out to go to the bathroom at night.
Yeah.
Well, in the spring, in the summer. And I've almost stepped on many a toad and I kind of like shoo them under the stairs, but he's very interested and he'll play bow and try to like fuck with them. He's not going to hurt them, but like I'm afraid don't lick them. Don't lick them.
Yeah. Do you have poisonous ones down by you, or are they just like your run-of-the-mill common ass toad?
I think it's, yeah, common ass toad. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commoner. All right. All right. We're gonna get into some magic and
Sorry,
lore.
I want that on a shirt. A picture of that frog underneath white letters.
Commoner.
This is commoner.
Let's do it. Add it to the Teespring.
Oh, fuck.
Oh man. All right. Magic
Yeah.
and lore.
Yeah,
I'm
let's do
excited.
it. Commoner. That and charlatan, we've been just like slinging. Just
Charlatan.
all right. Yeah, let's get into magic and lore. So frogs and toads feature prominently in magical folklore in many societies. I was telling Justina, just like researching this, if you type in frog and toad in witchcraft, the whole first page of Google and part of the second page is like boom, boom, boom. There's so much information. So we're going to lay some of that on you now. These amphibious critters are known for a variety of magical properties, from their ability to help predict the weather, to curing warts, to bringing good luck, as well as apparently bad luck if you cross one in the
Or
street
kill one.
or kill one.
Yeah.
So let's look at some points of the best known superstitions, omens, and folklore surrounding frogs and toads. We're going to start off with a bit of did you know? So, did you know that frogs appear in a number of folk cures and are said to treat a number of ailments from epilepsy to whooping cough and tuberculosis? So maybe Jillian, aka Celine, Coffin, maybe she did have the consumption.
Yeah.
Some creatures believe frogs bring good luck, but others say frogs carry evil spells and curses. In the Bible, a plague of frogs swarmed Egypt. This is the Christian God's way of showing dominance over the other deities of ancient Egypt. This is what the great Lord had to say. He said, let my people go. Let my people go so that they may worship me. If you refuse to let them go, I will plague your whole country with frogs.
I like how you're saying this like one of those pastors you see on TV down south.
Fire and brimstone, baby. There you go. The Nile will teem with frogs. They will come up into your palace, in your bedroom, and onto your bed, into your houses of officials and on your people, and into your ovens and kneading troughs. The frogs will go up onto you and your people and all your officials.
Demons.
Exodus 8, 1-4.
Oh my
So
god.
we'll talk about Egypt more a little later. In parts of Appalachia, it is believed that if you hear a frog croaking exactly at midnight, it means rain is on its way. However, in some societies, it's the opposite. Frogs croaking during the day indicates storms coming. There's an old British legend that carrying a dried frog in a pouch around your neck will prevent epileptic seizures. In some rural areas, it's just for frog livers that get dried and worn. Live frogs appear in a number of folk cures. It is believed that putting a live frog in your mouth will cure thrush, and that swallowing live frog, guys, don't do this.
Yeah.
Swallowing live frogs, presumably small ones, can cure whooping cough and tuberculosis. Rubbing a live frog or toad on a wart will cure that wart. I've heard of that one. That one's kind of popular, isn't it? But only if you impale the frog on a tree and let him die. That part I did not know.
Oh my god. Horrible. Leave him alone.
Leave him alone.
Yeah.
Some cultures believe commoner.
Wait, question. Did you ever have to dissect frogs in school?
No, our Catholic school was so poor. We did worms.
Yeah, I don't remember ever having to do that. And every time, like, that's such like a big like movie trope. Like you just see people dissecting frogs in movies all the time. And I'm like, what schools are these? Because my schools never did this shit.
No. Did
And
you
I would-
dissect anything?
I don't even think so. No, I don't remember dissecting anything. And I would be that kid that'd be like, I ain't doing that.
Yeah.
I will take the F. Gladly take the F.
There's
Not
a Angelina Jolie movie called Foxfire. I don't know if you're a fan of hers. I love her to death, but that
Yeah, I
has
like her.
really, really good 90s music in it.
yeah.
And there's a whole frog dissecting scene, and like the science teacher is like forcing the girl to do it, but he's also kind of like abusing some of the female students,
Yeah.
and they fuck his day up like after school. Like they lock him in, they tape him to a chair, and they beat the shit out of him.
They should have put like frogs in his pants or something.
I know. Some cultures believe that a frog coming into your house brings good fortune. Others say it's bad luck. The Kosa tribe say that a frog in your house might be carrying a spell or a curse. Either way, it's usually considered a bad idea to kill a frog. The Maori people believe that killing a frog can bring floods and heavy rains, but some African tribes say that the death of a frog will bring drought. Frogs have only been in Ireland for a few hundred years. Students from Trinity College released them into the wild. That's what? They're not native to Ireland?
I guess not.
That's blowing my mind.
Well, the
However,
Natterjack is from Ireland.
that's crazy. A few hundred years ago, it says.
Yeah.
Well, take it with a grain of salt. We're just reading the information. It says, however, there are still some frog folk tales in Ireland, including that you can tell the weather by the color of the frog. Rhinodophobia is the fear of frogs and toads. In some traditions, frogs are associated with cleansing and rebirth. Think for a moment about how a tadpole transforms into a frog. Ina Woolcott of Shamanic Journey says, frog is strongly linked with transformation and magic. Generally, frogs undergo a 2-stage life cycle. They start off as eggs, hatch into tadpoles, limbless, aquatic larvae with gills and a long flat tail. Legs and lungs develop, and the tail gradually disappears as the tadpole approaches the adult stage. This denotes the awakening of one's creativity. When frogs enter your life, it is an invitation to leap into your creative power.
Isn't that what we were saying before? We were talking about how like the transformation or like a metamorphosis, like the amazingness that is nature and life.
Yeah.
The ability to
Absolutely.
go from like one stage all the way up to like, you know, your fullest potential.
Yes.
There's just like the underlying spiritual meanings associated with these very practical beings.
Yep.
Yeah, so don't lick them, don't kill them. Let them
Don't
be.
lick them, don't kill them.
Let them be. Let them commoners be.
Commoners.
Oh god. All right. So we're going to talk about an Egyptian goddess of fertility. How do you say this? Heqet?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Or Heqet. This word, this here in the quotes also, you could also say Heqet.
Okay.
So identified with Hathor, represented in the form of a frog. To the Egyptians, the frog was an ancient symbol of fertility related to the annual flooding of the Nile. Heqet was originally the female counterpart of Khnum or Khnum, or the wife of Khnum, by who she became the mother of Her-ur. It has been proposed that her name is the origin of the name Hecate.
Wow.
Hecate, mighty Hecate, make it right. That's why
The frog!
That's why they used Hecate, which was the goddess for the frog spell, the
There you go.
resurrection spell.
It's all
And I
connected.
was wondering, remember when in what was it, the Book of Magic, where Jillian brought a toad or a frog to bed to help her with fertility? And I'm like, I wasn't finding anything about that. But like, look, the Egyptians
There it is.
considered the frog the ancient animal associated with fertility. So that's all, it all comes full circle. Not only that thing in the Book of Magic that I was like, what's that mean? But then also like why they used Hecate in that scene.
We're so good at our job.
Oh my God. Somebody please pat us on the back. Somebody please tell us that we're amazing.
Yeah. I know. I feel like we're the only people who are like, this is incredible. Look at what we found. Because we do a lot of this. We splice a lot of this separately.
Yeah.
And like, I did not even read that you wrote the thing about fertility. And I was like, hey, there's a goddess who's a frog.
Yeah. And I didn't even see that you wrote this about this goddess Hecate. Mighty Hecate. Take it right.
Yeah.
I still get a kick that they completely don't say the name right, but
part of me still feels like they knew their boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, don't invoke her.
Yeah.
She is in this book that I'm reading, that book I mentioned at the beginning. She's awesome. She is like Hades' right-hand girl, like his bestie, and she's freaking awesome. She's looking out for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love her.
Don't fuck her though. Don't fuck her over.
No.
Fuck your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were treading lightly when they filmed that scene, I want to say. I'm going to say it was an intentional choice not to say her name the right way because they don't want to invoke her, but was the intention there? Was it there? Ooh. No. All right, so the name is written as HQT with the determinative, quote, frog. The phonetic spelling may use the bilateral hieroglyph in place of a unilateral H. The alternative form, Heqet, or HQTYT, adds an explicit feminine ending used alongside the, quote, egg determinative to emphasize the deity's femininity. The Middle Egyptian pronunciation of the name may have been close to Haqatet, Haqatat, which has been proposed, among other possibilities, as the origin of the name Greek Hecate.
If you want to see what the determinative things that she's talking about, the links will be in our show notes. They're listed as like S38 and H8. If you click on them, they take you to a page that has hieroglyphic symbols if you want to know what the image looks like.
I wonder if any of those symbols were on that grimoire page from the movie.
Ooh,
Did you dive
there's
into any of
so
those?
many
Yeah,
hieroglyphics.
I know.
Did I ever tell you that my best friend and I used to write to each other in hieroglyphics, and then people started catching on? Like the alphabet, like we'd write out
Yeah.
that, the regular standard alphabet you can find on fucking Google, but people
Yeah.
started catching on, so we started writing it backwards,
Ah!
bottom to the top.
Me and my friends, we didn't write in hieroglyphics, but we came up with our own code, and
What
we
was
would
it?
pass each other notes in that code. And
Yeah.
one day in class, the teacher took the note away from us and they opened it to read to the class to embarrass us, and they couldn't because they didn't understand what the fuck it said.
Dumbass.
Yeah. So I'm
Girls are
like,
so smart.
I know, aren't we? Don't try to embarrass a teenage girl. We will find a way to embarrass you.
You can't outfox a fox.
You can't, that's right. All right, so we're getting into worship. So the beginning of her cult dates to the early dynastic period at least. Her name was part of the names of some highborn Second Dynasty individuals buried at Helwan, such as Prince Nishuquet, and was mentioned on a stela of Wempemnofret in the pyramid text. Dude, Egyptian names are bananas.
Dude, you're killing it.
I'm just making shit up. I don't even know if I'm saying this shit right. Early frog statuettes are often thought to be depictions of her. Heqet was considered the wife of Khnum, who formed the bodies of new children on his potter's wheel. In the Osiris myth, it was Heqet who breathed life into the new body of Horus at birth, as she was a goddess of the last moments of birth. As the birth of Horus became more intimately associated with the resurrection of Osiris, so Heqet's role became one more closely associated with resurrection.
Shut up!
Stop!
My mind is
Oh my god!
It's all
The
connected.
resurrection spell!
All connected.
That's why they used Hecate, because resurrection and frogs. Dude, okay. We are not giving the writers of this or the prop department enough credit because they had to have done the research. I think, was it in the last episode where we were like, oh, they're just prop people. They just smash shit on a page. They don't care what it is. No, this is like all connecting. This is all making
fantastic.
Fan-fucking-tastic. This is blowing my mind. So eventually, this association led to her amulets gaining the phrase, I am the resurrection, in the Christian era, along with the cross and lamb symbolism. By the way, for whoever is listening to this right now, me and Kristina, we like copy and paste. We just dump shit into these notes. We don't always read through all of them. So like me and Kristina right now, we're both surprised at our findings just now. This
You
is
really get an unadulterated, all of the excitement and like the surprise you guys hear, fucking genuine. I'm telling
real.
you.
Shit
Yeah.
is real.
Yeah.
So a temple dedicated to Horus and Heqet, dated to the Ptolemaic period, was found at Qus, Q-U-S. Where is that? As a fertility goddess associated explicitly with the last stages of the flooding of the Nile, and so with the germination of corn, she became associated with the final stages of childbirth. This association, which appears to have arisen during the Middle Kingdom, gained her the title She Who Hastens the Birth, the role of Heqet in the story of the birth of the royal children. From the Westcar Papyrus, frog amulets representing Heqet were probably worn by women during childbirth to ensure an easy delivery.
Again, linking to fertility and Jillian wanting that baby.
That's right.
Again,
Yeah.
Kos is in Egypt. It's like Middle Egypt, right on the Nile.
Okay. And question, what did they have to use to start this resurrection spell in the movie? What did they need? Those two
Blue
ingredients.
sage, braided
And
wheat straw,
wheat straw. What does wheat come from?
fields.
Is it? No, never mind. I'm thinking
Okay, not
corn.
papyrus.
No, it said the germination of corn, but I'm like corn,
Oh, yeah.
wheat,
Got it. Grain, a grain of some kind.
grain. Yeah,
Got it,
grain.
got it,
So
got it.
it just made me think of that because it said the germination of corn, she became associated with the final stages of childbirth.
Got it.
All right. So what is this chart you have here?
I want to talk about some other mythological beings. One is connected to our goddess who we just talked about. Heqet is another Egyptian deity of some kind. So Heqet is the deification of a concept of primordial darkness in the ancient Egyptian Ogdoad cosmology of Hermopolis.
What are these words?
I don't know. The Ogdoad consists of 4 pairs of deities, 4 male gods paired with their female counterparts. Heqet's female counterpart was Heqet. Heqet and Heqet in some aspects also represent night and day, and they're called riser up of the light and the riser up of the night, respectively. The name is written as KK or KKWY, with a variation of the sky hieroglyph in ligature with the staff associated with the word for darkness. That's fucking dope.
Yeah.
I am not Japanese. I don't know how to say Japanese. Jiraiya?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Jiraiya is from the Japanese folklore, and it is a toad riding protagonist of the Japanese folk tale, The Tale of the Gallant Jiraiya. The tale, I'm so butchering that. The tale was originally a yomihan that was published in 1806 and through 1807 and was adapted into a serialized novel that was written by different authors and published in 43 installments from 1839 to 1868. One of its illustrators was woodblock artist Kunisada. Kwatake Makuami then wrote a kabuki drama based on the first 10 parts of the novel, which premiered in Edo in 1852. Since then, the story has been adapted into several films, video games, and manga, and has also influenced various other works. The Titilak is through the Australian Indigenous mythology. The tale of Titilak the frog is a creation story from the Australian Indigenous dreaming stories. The legend of Titilak is not only an important story of the dream time, but has been the subject of popular modern children's books. In some Aboriginal language groups, Titilak is known as Moloch. There is a Welsh folklore creature called the Water Leaper, and this is an evil creature from Welsh folklore that lives in swamps and ponds. It is described as a giant frog with bat's wings instead of 4 legs, no hind legs, and a long lizard-like tail with a stinger at the end. It jumps across the water using its wings, hence the name. It was blamed for problems ranging from snapping fish lines to eating livestock or even fishermen.
Dude, do you think Jimmy is a water leaper?
He's an asshole. I guess. Well,
no, he's just an asshole.
Yeah.
No, because all right, so he's got all those frogs, right? Those frogs surrounding his evil entity, this evil creature, but also a giant frog with bat wings because he's a vampire. Dracula cowboy. I'm trying to make a connection.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. The last one I have is the Loveland Frog, and it's an American folklore. It's an Ohio folklore. The Loveland Frog, also known as the Loveland Frogman or Loveland Lizard, is a legendary humanoid frog described as standing roughly 4 feet tall, allegedly spotted in Loveland, Ohio. In 1972, the Loveland Frog legend gained renewed attention when a Loveland police officer reported to a colleague that he had seen an animal consistent with depictions of the Frogman. Dude, I didn't even look up this conspiracy. I should have looked this shit up.
What?
After a reported sighting in 2016, the second officer called a news station to report that he had shot and killed the same creature some weeks after the 1972 incident and had identified it as a large iguana that had been missing its tail. University of Cincinnati folklore professor Edgar Slitkin compared the Loveland Frog to Paul Bunyan's, saying that stories about it have been passed down for, quote, several decades, and that sighting reports seem to come in predictable cycles.
Like the Mothman, right?
The Mothman, yeah, yep.
Yeah, we're like
is
Bigfoot.
Is the Jersey Devil still like a?
Oh yeah,
that's still a thing.
Yeah, man. Pine Barrens. I've never even been that far South Jersey.
Oh.
It's that's like the southern tip of New Jersey, where it's not even really New Jersey anymore. It's like boondocks of New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never been down there, but apparently it's a thing.
Oh,
that would be so cool to do a whole episode on the Jersey Devil, or
I know you pick your state cryptid. I'll pick my state cryptid.
What is your state cryptid?
Dude, I don't know. I have no idea what it is down in South Carolina. Pennsylvania had like, it's not a cryptid, but it's more like a spooky tale. We had like the blue-eyed six, which
Oh, I
is
never heard of that.
like like a murder. I don't know.
Oh, it's just a murder.
It's just
It's
a
not
murder. I really don't know. I haven't been into cryptids till lately, so well,
okay.
that would be a fun thing to do.
That would be cool. Maybe on our Halloween episode, we'll get into some of that.
All right.
Yeah, cool,
All right.
cool. We're gonna get into, speaking of Halloween, we're gonna get into some Halloween folklore and myths.
Good
And
segue,
this
boo.
article is from froglife.org, and this is by Emily Robinson of London TOAD Project. The Toad Project. Again, this begins with the Macbeth famous quote, "Fillet of fenny snake in the cauldron boil and bake." Eye of newt and toe of frog, will of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blindworm sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth, boil and bubble. Look, I have my little familiar here with
I
me.
think Coraline loves when you get all witchy because she's
so
like, I'm ready to fuck shit up.
What are we doing, Ma? What are we doing?
You got frogs up here? You got newts up here?
Dude, she would so go ham on a frog.
I bet.
I let her eat one of those. Speaking of eating frogs, we're going to talk about edible frogs a little later on. But anyway, for many, the above passage will be familiar as a scene from Shakespeare's Macbeth. For those who are not familiar, most will at least know that it is a reference to a witch's brew. Amphibians and reptiles have long been associated with the occult, having deep-rooted ties to ancient folklore and mythology. Though these links are not as strong in the present, the negative stigma surrounding these species has pervaded. What better time than Halloween to delve into these stories and perform some much-needed myth-busting? Ew. Did witches really go around carving out newt eyes, leaving blind newts to stumble around lost? The answer is no. In Shakespeare's Elizabethan England, jobs such as midwives, herbalists, and healers were easily misunderstood and deemed witchcraft as a result. In an age predating modern medicine, people had to be more connected with nature to create medicines. They had to understand what was usable, what was not, which combinations worked for which illnesses, etc., etc. This makes complete sense, as we today still rely on nature for the base ingredients of many of our own medicines. These tradespeople relied on knowledge passed down through generations to create herbal remedies. To protect their livelihoods, their ingredients had to be shrouded in secrecy. This is no different to giant companies today like Coca-Cola hiding their proprietary ingredients to their, quote, magical brews. In order to keep their ingredients secret, they renamed a lot of what they used. This would also deter others from taking up the same practices, as animal body parts hardly sounded appealing and there's no business in having everyone trained as a healer. If we look at Shakespeare's cauldron, what was really being used was mustard seeds, eye of newt, buttercup, the toe of the frog, holly leaves, the wool of the bat, and hound's tongue, which is tongue of dog. The use of body parts to refer to parts of plants was common within these circles. Eyes would refer to seeds, tongues to petals, guts to roots, tail to stem, and so forth. That makes perfect sense. Like, I never thought about that before. Mm-hmm. Admittedly, adder's fork did refer to an adder's tongue, and a blindworm's sting refer to a slow worm's tail. That aside, selling potions with mysterious names would prevent customers from simply going off and making their own potions. The witchy aura of it all may also have legitimized the healer and had consumers convinced that they were taking magical cures, not too different to the placebo effect we know of today. Still, this does not answer the question of why there is such a gravitation towards reptiles and amphibians. Why do they inspire such revulsion? From medieval times, it was believed that all toads and frogs were poisonous. This is the case for some species, but certainly not within the UK. The fear stemmed from the fact that some amphibians can cause sickness or fatality if ingested. In particular, toads, as they released bufotoxin to deter predators when frightened. Furthermore, during breeding season, it is known that these animals can swarm in large numbers. In times past, animal swarming was not seen as a marvel of nature, but instead a precursor of evil, like all the swarms of locusts in the Bible, for example, right? They could be found in such quantities that people feared that they were spontaneously multiplying. Their choice of habitat invoked further fear, as swamps and stagnant pools of water were the antithesis of consecrated holy water, and the list goes on. Dude, did you see on TikTok recently, there was a woman who, I guess it was like Southern California. I'm not really sure where this was, but there were basically swarms of locusts like all around her house. Like she couldn't even leave her house.
Ew.
Locusts were just like everywhere. Everywhere.
That's so crazy. No, I
Yeah.
didn't see that
Like
at all.
nuts. It's nuts.
Wow.
But anyway, so however, it did not always used to be that way. Frogs used to symbolize fortune, rebirth, rain, fertility, and heightened spirituality. The Egyptian goddess Heqet, which we just talked about, occasionally depicted with the frog's head, was the goddess of fertility and childbirth. Rain was the giver of life, allowing crops to grow and rivers to flow, and consequently, frogs became predictors of rain as they would gather in large numbers as the heavens showered. This was a trait that also the rain in the movie, Rain, the frogs, when were they burying Jimmy? In the
It was
fucking
raining.
rain. It was raining. There you go. So it wasn't raining when they first got there with him. It was raining after they did the resurrection spell. So this was a trait that was also shared with other amphibians such as our toads and newts. Snakes symbolize immortality with their skin shedding. Lizards represented regeneration due to their ability to regrow tails. As we celebrate Halloween, it is perhaps a time to reflect and rediscover the awe of the ancient Egyptians and Mesopotamians. Rather than perceive the brilliant nature of metamorphosis as these species morph from egg to adult as something to fear, it is time to shift back to the perspective that it is magic to be revered and protected at all costs.
All right. This comes from Bone and Sickle, and it says that toads have been long associated with magic as witches' familiars and as a source of both poison and as folk healing. We began with a poison allegedly brewed from the toad by the, quote, wise wife of Keith, Agnes Saperston, one of the...
Wait.
Where am I?
But yeah, no, you're in the right spot. Agnes Sampson.
Oh, Saperstein. Dude.
You made her Jewish, Saperstein.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's so funny.
From a toad by the wise wife of Keith, Agnes Sampson, one of the accused in Scotland's North Berwick witch trials in 1591 to 1592. The poison was to have been used against Scotland's James VI before he ascended England's throne as James I. At the center of the trial was the accusation that Sampson and others had raised a storm to sink the ship bearing James home from Oslo with his new wife Anne of Denmark. Shakespeare seemed to allude to the elements from this trial in his play of Macbeth, mentioning toads and frogs as elements of the concoction brewed by the witches in Act 4, and seemingly referencing the events in an aside uttered by a witch regarding sending a storm against an enemy ship. The bard's inclusion of, quote, real witchcraft in his play has long been said to be the reason for a, quote, curse upon productions of Macbeth, including, dude, what? I didn't know about any curses about Macbeth. Have you heard about that?
I think so.
It's like a poltergeist thing.
Yeah.
Including in our discussion is a particularly ugly and lethal 1848 incident in New York City attributed to this bit of lore. A witch's servant or familiar in the form of a toad is also alluded to as an offstage character in Macbeth. Mrs. Carswell reads for us a number of accounts from 16th and early 17th century England presenting toad familiars sent to torment the enemies of witches. We also hear of a toad exploding in a fire and toads sustained on the blood of their witch mistresses, like we were talking about in that Salem scene. It's just sucking on her leg, as well as
I'm gonna watch that later.
Oh, it was just like too intimate. Like it was just like too much for me, as well as a sad story from Newmarket, England, involving William Harvey, physician to Charles I, and a brutish attempt to subject an alleged toad familiar to scientific scrutiny. We next discuss the fear of toad's venom in the Middle Ages, hearing some comments on the subject from 12th century German mystic and theologian Hilgard von Bingen, and a tale associated with the English boy saint William of Norwich, involving some prisoners and an unfortunate attempt at the use of toad poison. Toad's venom, according to medieval folklore, could be neutralized by the toadstone, a particular mineral also assigned powers against stomach and kidney ailments. We hear of a particular method of obtaining this prized artifact, an obscure reference to the Toadstone in the 1973 folk horror classic, The Wicker Man. We also hear a clip from The Wicker Man in which a toad or frog is used in a folk medicine to cure sore throat. Superstitions about toads and their magical efficacy against various ailments continued into the 19th century, resulting in the phenomena of traveling toad doctors and toad fairs. The use of toad bones in a midnight ritual performed by English toadmen in order to gain mastery of horses, there you go, to be trained is also discussed, as the discovery of miniature frog coffins stashed in Finnish churches in a folk magic practice similar to the British and American use of witch bottles. Adorable.
Oh my god.
We return to the content and the discussion of toads' association with witches and heretics, as conceived by the church in terms of service to Satan. Daddy Satan!
You were going to say that. Daddy Satan!
This topic brings us a letter written by Pope Gregory IX to bishops of the German Rhineland involving Satan as a French-kissing toad, as well as a ritual attributed to French and Italian members of the Waldensian sect allegedly consuming a ritual beverage brewed from toad excrement. In Spain's Basque province of Navarre, home to the Cave of Witches at
Zagaramurdi?
Witchcraft trial testimonies demonstrate a particular emphasis on toads. We hear of them raised by novice witches in the fields used to poison the land and dancing at witches' Sabbaths.
Is that why they would hear them in Devotion Field?
It's just kind of haunting to be able to hear something and not see it. And it's just such a constant, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Toads are sometimes mentioned as an ingredient of the flying ointment, believed to have induced a visionary experience transporting witches to hilltop revels. However, this effect is more likely attributed to other ingredients in historical recipes, particularly plants of the nightshade family, which we talked about in our brooms episode.
Yeah.
And our belladonna episode.
Right. Yeah, we did.
While the venom produced by toads of the old world doesn't seem to contain the quality and quantity of bufotoxin necessary to produce such visions, this can be said of certain New World species. One of these is the cane toad, that invasive species best known for infesting Australia, Florida, and other southern states, and native to South and Central America. In the Caribbean, it's been identified by Harvard ethnobotanists Wade Davis as a possible ingredient in the drug administered in Haiti to transform an enemy into a zombie. The zombie drug, i.e., to drug the individual into a death-like state from which he is later resurrected. Dude, sorry, Jimmy.
Oh, shit. Well, also, this is talking about the Caribbean, right?
Yeah,
and kind of what they did in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Curacao, if that grimoire came from Maria and that grimoire was in Curacao at one point, she was taking her notes in that grimoire. She was putting stuff from Curacao in that grimoire. That spell could have definitely come right from the freaking Caribbean.
Zombie spell!
Zombie spell! Zombie frogs.
Right. Research into the subject was documented in Davis' 1985 book, The Serpent and the Rainbow, later serving loosely as inspiration for Wes Craven's 1988 film of the same name, from which we hear there's a clip linked here. You can check our show notes. The show ends with a quick look at the role of Colorado River toad or Sonora Desert toad as a source of psychedelic experience, particularly as it has been reinvented with the last years as part of a life-changing quote unquote shamanic experience for drug consumers already bored with the ayahuasca. So it's their next step, I guess.
The next fad, the next big thing. But dude, leave the toads alone, like we said before.
Yep, that was all from Learn Religions, froglife.org, and boneandsickle.blueberry.net.
All right, so we are going to dive a little deeper into the term toe of frog, right? And we're gonna touch a little bit on this, but this definitely deserves its own episode. I think we should deconstruct the whole entire Midnight Margarita spell and the scene. I'm on the same page with you there.
Absolutely.
So when Shakespeare's witches call for a bit of toe of frog, not related to frogs at all. It turns out that there's a variety of buttercup, the Ranunculus acris L, known in folklore as frog's foot. Also, it was linked with Ranunculus bulbosus, So we're going to dive a little bit deeper there at some point. From the botanical magazine or flower garden displayed. It's entirely possible that Shakespeare was referring to the petals of this flower. Like many members of the buttercup family, this particular species is considered toxic and can cause skin inflammation. The Victorians, again going back to those creepy bastards, associated it with selfishness and ingratitude. Ranunculus acris L. The most common names for that include meadow buttercup, tall buttercup, common buttercup, commoners, and giant buttercup. Toxicity. As far as the toxicity goes, there are about 200 to 600 species of buttercup, and although they are beautiful, they are known to be poisonous to humans and cattle, so don't eat them. The oils in this plant, probably present in the leaves and the stems, contain glycoside ranunculin, which, when ingested, can cause abdominal pains and intestinal disorders. When eaten by animals, the buttercups have caused blistering on the tongue and the lips, diarrhea, and even blindness. Other symptoms of poisoning include ventricular fibrillation and respiratory failure. So recall a childhood game where a buttercup held under someone's chin indicated their fondness for butter. A yellow shine confirmed it. In earlier times, this trick gauged truthfulness, jealousy, or love. In certain parts of England, the meadow buttercup earned the nickname, quote, crazies, due to the belief in its odor causing madness. Conversely, buttercup flowers were worn around the neck or called Christ eye, akin to marigold, to counteract lunacy.
How about that?
Yeah, although cows shun buttercups for their acrid taste, a misconception claimed that cows consuming them yielded yellow butter. On Midsummer's Eve, garlands blessed cows for better milk. In Ireland, uprooting buttercups supposedly decreased milk yield. In folklore, fairies sipped dew from small buttercups and bathed with larger ones, placing buttercups on May Eve doorsteps guarded against fairy pranks. Beyond divination and love, buttercups symbolize abundance, prosperity, and success. Contrary to madness, they aid in managing turbulent emotions and casting dream manifesting spells. Cultivate them in your garden to invite fairies. The term king cob likens unopened flower buds to gold studs on a king's attire. The folded calyx is also called gold cup, gold knob, and cuckoo bud.
Cute.
The misnomer buttercup likely arose from cows supposedly turning butter yellow, which is not accurate, or from the petal's shiny, oily surface. The name actually signifies button cop, akin to button head in Old English. The buttercup in Wiltshire and surroundings is known as crazy, referencing its perceived madness-inducing quality, or as a corruption of Christ eye. Various buttercup species share a burning acrid taste. The ordinary field buttercup's acrimony reddens and inflames hands when uprooted. Cows avoid it due to mouth sores. Crushing buttercup leaves blisters skin and causes mouth pain. A tincture from bulbous buttercup mixed with spirit of wine treats shingles and passive pleurisy. Consuming 6 to 8 drops with water 3 to 4 times daily aids in this. In France, it's jonnet. Buttercups might be the cuckoo buds in Shakespeare's works. Crowfoot leaves, part of an 18th century cancer cure, mixed with dog's foot fennel leaves with white arsenic and flowers of sulfur, formed a paste applied as a poultice. Common buttercup juice triggers sneezing and alleviates passive headaches. Tincture helps sciatica. Spearwort's blistering effects involves placing it under a limpet shell against the skin. Marsh crowfoot tincture, derived from the herb sardonique in France, aids side stitches, rib neuralgia, and pleurisy when diluted. It grows near pools with small yellow flowers. And pleurisy is the inflammation of the sheet-like layers that cover the lungs, also known as the pleura. Yeah, so the Abenaki smash the flowers and leaves and sniff them for headaches. The Bellicula apply a poultice of pounded roots to boils. The Micmac.
That's my maternal lineage dates back to the Micmac tribe. They're like the French Canadian side of the country up there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So the Micmac use the leaves for headaches. The Montaignais inhale the crushed leaves for headaches. The Cherokee use it as poultice for abscesses, use an infusion for oral thrush, and use the juice as a sedative. They also cook the leaves and eat them as greens. The Iroquois apply a poultice of the smashed plant to the chest for pains and colds, take an infusion of the roots for diarrhea, and apply a poultice of plant fragments with another plant to the skin for excess water in the blood. And some of those sources are witchesandpagans.com, magic-spells-and potions.com. We'll link all these below, and ballyahoo.com.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to have way more mythology for you and where the frog pops up in pop culture. Stick around. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Magnolia Street Podcast. This next one is really long. It's from annex.exploration.edu.
Oh my God.
I'll take what I can, but I was hoping you would read this one. But we're going to alternate. So I'll take a couple. We're both coughing today.
I know, dude, my throat is so dry. We've been talking for a while.
Let's drink break. Yeah, good idea. Frog myths. And this says, and so I shed my skin and walked away new. Frogs, toads, and secret transformation. The life cycle of frogs and toads involves at least one major transformation from tadpole to adult. Many also shed their skins regularly as they grow, and some species eat their shed skin.
Ew.
These spectacular transformations may explain why many cultures see frogs and toads symbolic of recreation or as keepers of the secrets of transformation. The Omlik tribes created images of a toad god of rebirth, eating its own skin. It is reborn by consuming itself. This reminds me of the snake.
Oh yeah, the snake eating its tail. What was that
Yeah.
called? There was a name for that, right? I don't remember it off the top of my head.
It starts with an O. I don't know. It is reborn by consuming itself, caught in a cycle of death and rebirth, like people and like the natural world itself. In many ancient Chinese tales and legends, the toad is a trickster and a magician, a master of escapes and spells. But he is also the keeper of the real powerful secrets of the world, such as the secret of immortality. Many legends involve a wandering wise man called Luahai and his three-legged toad companion, Chanchu. The toad knows the secret of eternal life and for his friendship reveals the secret to the wise man. In Japan, a similar legend involves the Gamasinen, also known as Korsensei, a wise man with a hunchback and a warty face. Korsensei wanders the land with his toad companion who teaches him the secret powers of herbs, including the secret of immortality. Interestingly, many of these Asian tales refer to the secret of immortality as a fungus growing from the toad's forehead. It has been suggested that this may be a link to many shamanic traditions of the Americas where hallucinogenic compounds derived from frogs and toads are used for religious rituals of communication with the spirit world and self-transcendence.
So this one is Poison, Hallucination, Transcendence, the Alchemical Amphibian. One of the other forms of power that frogs and toads wield in many cultures and myths is chemical or alchemical. Frogs are viewed as the purveyors of poison or of powerful drugs, which can heal or induce hallucinations, which we talked about kind of before with the Sonoran desert toad. In many cases, these myths have some foundation in truth, as some species contain compounds both poisonous and hallucinogenic. Many tribes of South and Central America have used compounds from frogs and toads as poisons and hallucinogenic drugs for religious rituals. In medieval Europe, toads were viewed as evil creatures whose blood was a potent poison and whose body parts had strange powers. Some of these views were created by writers from classical Greece and Rome whose opinions held great sway. Here's this name again, Pliny the Elder, imputed many strange powers to toads. A toad's presence will silence a room full of people. A small bone from a toad's right side will keep water from boiling. A bone from the left side will repel the attack of dogs. A widely held superstition concerned the fabulous toadstone, a jewel that was supposed to be found inside the toad's head. This jewel, placed in a ring or a necklace, would heat up or change color in the presence of poison, thereby protecting the wearer from foul play. In Shakespeare's play As You Like It, the old duke says, "Sweet are the uses of adversity, which, like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head." Dude, I freaking love how Shakespeare was fucking witchy as fuck.
He was bananas.
He was so bananas. Toads were also commonly seen as evil spirits or as the imp, or also known as a familiar who accompanied witches, assisting them in their evil designs. These familiars could also be cats, crows, insects, or dogs. In the in the annals of the in the annals of witches, in the annals of the witch trials of Saint Osyth in England, Ursula Kempy's young son testified that one of her 4 familiars, a black toad named Pigeon, had once called illness in a young boy. Toads were also popular as poisonous ingredients in potions. It was said that, quote, the women witches of ancient time which killed by poisoning did much use toads in their confections, end quote. Male witches were also purported to use toads for their poisonous magic. Such folklore and popular mythology is a result of Inquisition propaganda and does not reflect pagan religions.
This next one says, hideous and so beautiful, frogs, toads, and love. The motif of frogs as masters of transformation appears in perhaps the most famous frog tale in Western culture, Story of the Frog Prince. The story is simple. A princess is wooed by a frog who asks for a kiss. First recoiling in horror, the maiden eventually relents out of sympathy or kindness and kisses the frog. Suddenly, the frog is transformed into a handsome prince, and the couple are married, living happily ever after. Interestingly, this story has many early variations in which the frog or toad is female, and the young man must make the leap in order to discover his beautiful bride. For example, an early medieval tale from the Piedmont region of Italy recounts that a father with 3 daughters, the elder too selfish and the youngest is good, falls ill and travels to a famous healer's castle. Before he leaves, he asks each daughter what they want him to bring back for them. The 2 eldest each ask for jewelry, while the youngest asks for only a flower. Arriving at the castle, the father finds no one is at home. Dismayed, he readies himself to leave, but on his way out sees a beautiful garden. This reminds me of like Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
Thinking he'll at least bring his youngest a flower, he picks a rose. Suddenly, a huge toad appears and says, roses and toads again! Who gave you leave to pick flowers in my goddamn garden? In my garden. The toad adds, you must pay with your life for your theft. The only way... What?
Do you think that... Okay. So, you know how the roses grow in the garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Sally starts hacking away at them, right? So she's like trying to like get rid of the roses. Do you think Jimmy is like, all right, you're taking my roses, I'm gonna take your sister.
I'm gonna take your life.
Collateral.
Whoa! Get up. Cool.
Uh-huh.
It says the only way the magic toad will pardon the father is if he will give his youngest daughter to the toad in marriage. Distraught, the father returns home, determined to sacrifice himself instead of his daughter. However, his devout daughter cannot bear this, and so sneaks... This is just Beauty and the Beast!
Basically, yeah. Yeah.
And so sneaks off that night and marries the toad. When she gets into bed with the toad, she finds him transformed into a handsome prince. The prince tells her she must never reveal his secret and gives her a magic ring. So is he a frog during the day and a prince
Wait,
at
is
night?
this not the Frog Prince? Isn't that a story too? The Frog Prince?
Yeah, we just did that one a little earlier. This one is slightly different, in which I think he only turns into a prince at night.
Okay.
Gives her a magic ring, which will grant her whatever she wishes. Her sisters, expecting her to be miserable as a bride of the toad, become suspicious of her happiness and press her for the truth. Finally, she reveals the secret and the toad falls deathly ill. Weeping and praying for her love's life, the maiden remembers the ring and wishes that her love may be healed. When nothing happens, she throws the ring into the lake in rage. Suddenly, the toad vanishes and her handsome lover appears out of the lake. The enchantment is broken and her lover is returned to human form. In each instance of the story, true beauty is hidden beneath a superficial ugliness. The hero or heroine must recognize that beauty or make a leap of faith so that the beauty may be revealed. Get it? Leap of faith. Like a frog. Toads are viewed in medieval Europe as a symbol of romantic jealousy, the embodiment of an ugly and poisonous feeling. Spencer in The Fairy Queen describes a character eaten up by jealousy. Nor ever is he...
this is old English shit.
Yeah, okay. Nor ever is he wont or not to feed but toads and frogs. His pasture poisonous, which is cold complexion, do breed a filthy blood. or humor rancorous matter of doubt and dread superstitious, that doth with cureless care consume the heart, corrupt the stomach with gall vicious. I should be able to read this because this is what I see reading normal shit. Vicious croquets the liver and internal smart, and doth transfix the slough of death's eternal dart. Fuck me.
Oh my god. That was a tongue
I
twister.
tag you in.
Yeah.
Tap out.
All right. Tag, I'm it. All right. So Shakespeare, writing later, has Othello. You ever see Scary Movie? She was like, what did she say? She's like, I'm watching Shakespeare in Love. She's like in the movie theater and she's watching Shakespeare in Love. It's so fucking funny.
Shakespeare love.
Shakespeare in Love. She's eating her bucket of chicken. I love that movie. Shakespeare, writing later, has Othello racked by jealousy in toad form. O curse of marriage, that we can call these delicate creatures ours, and not their appetites. I had rather be a toad and live upon the vapor of a dungeon than keep a corner of a thing I love for other uses.
Ooh, shit.
Milton, in Paradise Lost, has Satan embodied as a toad to corrupt Eve's mind with jealousy. The ugly and presumably poisonous toad made it the perfect foil, embodiment of the strange, the inexplicable, the pestilent, and the evil that humans felt both in themselves and in the world around them.
Do you want to wrap this up and finish this next
Sure.
one out?
All right, oh my god, that's a long one.
I know.
All right, so the rains came, the land was renewed, and life returned. Frogs as fertility symbols, going back to the fertility and like Jillian wanting to have a baby.
There it is.
So frogs and toads were not always and in all places reviled as evil. For many cultures, these amphibians were symbols of and connected to divine powers of fertility, regeneration, and rebirth. In ancient Egypt, the frog appears as a symbol of fertility, water, and renewal. We talked about Heqet earlier. She's appeared as a woman with the head of the frog. Frogs were also the symbol of the midwife goddess Heqet, who ruled conception and birth. And Egyptian women often wore metal amulets in the form of frogs to enlist her good favor. Frogs appeared in great numbers each year at the flooding of the Nile, an event which was crucial to agriculture in that it provided water for many distant fields. Frogs thrived in the muddy bogs left by the receding waters, and it is easy to imagine how frogs came to be viewed as favorable symbols of abundance. In fact, the frog became a symbol for the number Hefnu. Isn't that a rune? Isn't that a
Oh, I'll look it up.
yeah, a
Hefnu.
runestone? Which meant either 100,000 or simply an immense number. Perhaps it is frogs' impressive fertility combined with their association with water so important for human life that has led humans to see them as such potent and positive symbols. In pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, many tribes worshipped a goddess known as Sonotl, the patron of childbirth and fertility, who took the form of a frog or a toad with many udders. Also, frogs and toads were considered spirits of rain and were used in many rituals intended to bring the rains. The Aymara tribe of Peru and Bolivia made small frog images which they placed on hilltops to call down the rain. Indeed, if the rains failed, some tribes blamed the toads for withholding the rain and would lash them in punishment. So sad. Don't blame it on the frogs.
No.
The early Aztecs saw the toad as Tlatucuti, the earth mother goddess who embodied the endless cycle of death and rebirth. She appears either as a real toad or in quasi-human form with clawed feet and a gaping fanged mouth, and her joints are adorned with human skulls. Ew. She usually appears in a squatting position, giving birth to the new world, while dying souls pass through her fanged mouth to the netherworld. In one legend, she is the source of the entire universe. Quetzalcoatl. We talked about that before.
did.
Quetzalcoatl? Where do we talk? What episode was that?
I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can find her.
Yeah, Quetzalcoatl, the bird serpent god, and Tezcatlipoca, the magician jaguar god, find her floating alone on the primordial sea. They tear her body in half, with one half forming heaven and the other forming the earth. Some common Mesoamerican toads are known to cannibalize their own and other toad species, which may explain the use of the toad as the image of destruction as well as fertility or rebirth.
Chocolate tipsy cake. I think we talked about her.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of the Mayan
Got
connection.
it.
Yeah.
Got
okay,
it,
cool.
got it.
Back on
Okay.
board.
All right. The ancient Chinese saw the toad as a predominantly female force, a negative yin in opposition to the positive male yang. The moon was the ultimate symbol of yin, and so many Chinese tales refer to the toad whose face is visible at the full moon. Interestingly, this moon toad was thought to occasionally swallow the moon, causing eclipses. It's like that Jewel song Jupiter, when she talks about swallowing the moon. I
Not
love that
drops
song.
of Jupiter. Drops of Jupiter. Dude, I don't know what Hefnu is. I typed it
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
I typed in Hefnu number.
It's not just a.
No, it comes up Holocaust Educational Foundation of Northwestern University in Illinois.
Oh,
I don't know. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
All right. Okay. All right, so lastly, frogs and toads, or lastly of this article, frogs and toads are our companions on Earth, as they have been for countless centuries. They live in the stories and myths of almost every human culture, taking on almost every role conceivable, from the trickster to the devil to the mother of the universe. The human imagination, with its need for meaning, its hunger for stories, casts and recasts frogs and toads as major characters in the unfolding story of the world. But as human population growth destroys more and more of their habitat, as their numbers diminish from causes still mysterious to us, we hear less and less from these companions. What richness will our stories lose when we no longer hear these spirit voices at all? Like we were talking about before, like it would sound, the nighttime would sound so lonely without them, right?
Yes.
Not because we have lost our fascination for them, but because the woods and ponds are literally silent and empty. Who will populate our mythologies when these creatures are gone? Perhaps we will be left with only one story, the story of loss. So,
Oh my God.
yeah. Be good to your planet, everybody.
I know, dude. This comes back to, I don't know if I said it on here, but
Yeah.
when the fires in Hawaii were happening, was I talking to you about this?
I don't think so.
Or Caitlin? Like, to me, like, we are just, humans are just like a bacteria or an infection in the body that is Earth. And the Earth has to like purge us. Like, it has all these fires to like have a fever to get rid of us because we just are destroying her.
Right.
Yeah.
We
Right.
deserve it. We deserve her wrath sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Humans are gonna be our downfall. We're gonna be our own downfall.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right.
That's
We
all
got
right. So
some myths here, right?
yeah, witches, warts, frogs, and toads amphibian myths. So Halloween is coming up soon.
Can't wait.
And you'll likely see a few warty witches over that period of time. And that brings to mind a few amphibious myths that have popped up over the centuries. Why, for instance, do witches use toads in their potions? And did they really get those warts from frogs? Let's take a look at some amphibian myths that keep popping up in stories that just aren't true. Myth number 1, frogs and toads give you warts. The myth has been around for a long time and is basically saying that picking up or touching or handling frogs and toads can cause you to get warts on your skin. This myth has been around for a long... What the fuck? The truth is that frogs and toads can have warty looking skin, but those aren't actually warts that they have on their bodies. They are actually glands for secretion. Warts on human skin are caused by a virus, and you can't get it from amphibians. You may, however, get a rash from the frog's skin secretion, which we talked about that can, you know, some frogs and no touchy.
Yeah.
Myth number 2 is that frogs can be used to cure illnesses. Alternatively, some folk medicines say that eating frogs, rubbing them on your skin, or wearing their dried organs in a pouch around your neck can cure various ailments. And stories about witches talk about them using frogs and toads in all kinds of magical cures and curses. The truth is, you probably should leave your medicinal treatment to better proven methods or recommendations from your doctor. Certain species of frogs, such as bullfrogs, can certainly be eaten. Have you ever eaten a frog?
No, but I know isn't it like a delicacy in France?
Yeah, frog legs or something. Yeah.
I've never had them though.
Me either.
Would I try them? Probably. I've eaten turtle before, so.
Yeah. But all they'll give you is nutrition, not a magical cure. Myth number 3 is kissing frogs turns them into princes. The frog who turns into a prince upon being kissed by a princess is one of Grimm's fairy tales. The story is so enjoyed that it has been passed down in many forms and made into movies. Unfortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, real frogs don't turn into anything other than frogs. The truth is, kissing a frog is probably a bad idea. Rather than a happy ending, you'll most likely end up with a case of salmonella, which amphibians tend to carry. Also, it's not a great idea to kiss not ideal for the frog
Mhm.
because they absorb a lot of things through their skin. Any chemicals in lip balm or other substances on your lips will get into their body. You can
Oh.
also pass on germs to your frog. Don't kiss your froggies.
Oh.
Myth number 4 is that frogs can be turned into poison. Well, this one's not entirely a myth, since some frogs and toads do in fact secrete toxic substances. However, you don't really need to worry about whether someone's brewed a frog-based poison and slipped it to you. All you really need to do is avoid this one and don't lick frogs or toads.
Yeah, I think we've beaten that dead horse
Yeah.
this whole episode. Like, yeah, we've talked about that.
Don't lick
This is
them.
our episode. Don't lick them. Don't touch them. Leave them be. All right. Okay, we're gonna get into some pop culture right now. This is our last segment here. So, this list is restricted solely to notable frog and toad characters from notable works of fiction. And this list, you can find this on Wikipedia. Also, there were a few ones that I added at the end because there were ones that like I loved growing up that I didn't see on this list.
Oh.
So, the first one is Ogaru in Spirited Away. This is a minor character in the film. This frog spirit guards the bridge that Haku and Chihiro or Chihiro must
No, you said
cross.
the first
Chihiro?
one. Chihiro. Yeah.
Oh, you love all these
I love
anime.
this movie.
Yeah, yeah. Chihiro must. I saw this movie like once, like ages ago. I haven't seen it since, but I remember it being really cute and like really good.
Mm-hmm.
Chihiro must cross when Chihiro has first arrived in the spirit world and has to go meet with Yubaba. Next is the Big Heads from Rocco's Modern Life on Nickelodeon. You remember this show?
Oh my gosh, I forgot about them.
The Big Heads, and they talk like
this.
They're us. Yeah. They're basically Donna and Darlene.
Nice.
So Bev Big Head wears the pants in the family. She demonstrates a loud, domineering manner, and she keeps Ed in line. Despite all these, though, she has shown that she loves her husband very much. Beneath her ugly exterior and grating voice, she's friendly and a closet party animal. And Ed Big Head is an employee at a large corporation. He's cruel, petty, bossy, has a terrible temper, and in fact, the only people that he fears are his wife, Bev, and his boss, Mr. Dupet. He particularly dislikes Rocco and his friends, Heifer, Wolf, and Filbert. He usually yells at anyone he sees and grumbles bitterly under his breath at any situation he finds even slightly troubling. Basically, my husband.
Is he a Pisces?
Yeah, he is Pisces. The next is Hypnotoad from Futurama, a large toad with pulsating multicolored eyes which emits a loud, ominous buzzing noise. It has the power to hypnotize almost any living thing at will, even mass numbers of creatures. The Hypnotoad first appeared in the episode The Day the Earth Stood Stupid, in which it hypnotized a flock of sheep to herd themselves into a pen and close the door behind them. The panel of judges to win the pet show, and then the audience of the pet show to force their approval of that victory. It later acquired its own television show, Everybody Loves Hypnotoad, in which it hypnotizes the audience. The Futurama Bender's Big Score DVD includes a full 22-minute episode. Next, we have Jason Funderburker from Over the Garden Wall, A.K. Kitty, Wirt Jr., George Washington, Mr. President, Benjamin Franklin, Dr. Cucumber, Greg Jr., Skipper, and Ronald. This toad has so many different names. It's basically the little boy Greg, the character Greg in this cartoon. It's his pet. It's his pet frog throughout the entire series, and he throughout like each episode he gives it like different names. It's really cute.
He's so cute. He's just carrying it around like a little stuffed animal.
Yeah, it's adorable. So Greg continually renames the frog throughout the series before eventually settling on Jason Funderburker in the final episode. I recently bought that soundtrack on vinyl because the music for that show is beautiful.
I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I have to check it out.
Yeah. So the next one is Michigan J. Frog from Looney Tunes. This is a male frog who wears a top hat, carries a cane, sings pop music, ragtime. He sang that song, Hello, My Baby, Hello, My Darling. Remember that guy?
Hello, my ragtime gal.
Yeah. And other songs from the late 19th and early 20th centuries while dancing and performing acrobatics in the style of early 20th century vaudeville. Also formerly served as the mascot for the former WB television network. My cousins used to have like a coffee mug, the frog with that frog. Yeah.
He's iconic. WB Frog.
Yeah. The next one is Gene Bob I don't know if it's Jean Bob or Jean Bob from the Swan Princess. Jean Bob is a frog who came from France.
Probably
It's probably
Jean Bob.
Jean. Yeah, Jean Bob is a frog who came from France. He is Odette's, Derek's, Speed's, Alice's, Prince Lee's, Princess Mei Lee's, Chanru's, and Puffin's friend. So all those characters, he's friends with them. Don't know anything about that one. The next one is King Harold from Shrek 2 and Shrek the Third. Harold is a frog who was turned into a human by the fairy godmother's magic, meaning he could live out his life as a king of far, far away. Harold is a human for the majority of the second Shrek film until the end, where the fairy godmother is vaporized, meaning he is returned to his natural state of being a frog. Harold dies near the beginning of Shrek the Third, not before informing Shrek of another possible heir to the throne, Arthur Pendragon. The next one, do you remember Sanrio, the Hello Kitty? It's kind of like a company that owns Hello Kitty.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Karopi Hasu, I don't know how you say this name.
Yes.
Hasuno from Sanrio is a small frog with a V-shaped mouth, big eyes, who is friends with Hello Kitty and lives in Donut Pond.
I used to have a planner with that little Donut Pond character on it.
Karopi.
Yeah, that was
My
so cool.
favorite was always the penguin, Bats Maru, because he looked like a little
Oh yeah, I remember
rump-ass
him.
brat. Yeah,
he was so angry.
I loved him. Yeah, that was I felt like he was my spirit animal. Alter ego.
You are a frog.
Or an angry penguin, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Next one is Mr. Toad of Toad Hall, and this is one of the main characters in the 1908 novel The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame, and also the title character of the 1929 A.A. Milne play Toad of Toad Hall, based on the book. I love Wind in the Willows, and I think, did I tell you there's a restaurant at that Grounds for Sculpture art park that I love going to? Yes. The whole restaurant is based off of The Wind in the Willows, and it's just adorable. I love that. I love that whole series. The next one is Plato the Frog from the Night of the Rabbit point-and-click adventure game. Plato is the mailman in Mousewood. He can travel almost anywhere in Mousewood on his bicycle, although he initially needs help getting it unstuck. Once you help him, he becomes great friends with Jerry. I think his name is Jerry Hazelnut or something like that. Something like that. This is a point-and-click adventure game, like on the computer. Mm-hmm. My favorite game, best soundtrack ever, and I just discovered that they also, the writer of this game is creating a podcast now based on the stories. So even though the rights of this game are held by Daedalic Entertainment, who they made the game, this is the writer behind all the stories that went into the game. So he actually got permission. Yeah, he got permission from Daedalic to continue and expand on the story in audio format, and he's also writing a novel. So I am so excited.
Wow.
This is my favorite game. I'm such a nerd. This is my favorite computer game ever.
I had no idea.
The lore in this game, it's just like a cute little game to escape to when, like, I want to escape reality for a little bit. The animals talk, you can interact with different animal characters, and it's like very woodsy.
Is it a computer, PC, or Mac game? Or
I think it might come for both computer and Mac. I mean, Windows and Mac. But check it out. And, if you don't want to play the game, you can always immerse yourself in the beautiful soundtrack by Tilo Alperman, and that's on Spotify, the entire soundtrack. But listen to the podcast too, because it's so cute, and I just started listening to it. I'm so excited that I found it.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. And then lastly, we have the most famous frog in the world, probably, Kermit. Right? Kermit the Frog is a Muppet character created and originally performed by Jim Henson. Introduced in 1955, Kermit is the pragmatic, everyman protagonist of numerous Muppet productions, most notably as the showrunner and the host of the sketch comedy television series The Muppet Show, and a featured role on Sesame Street, as well as in other television series, feature films, specials, and public service announcements throughout the years. He served as a mascot of the Jim Henson Company and appeared in various Henson projects until 2004.
What happened after 2004?
I don't know. I don't know what happened, but Jim Henson died like ages ago, like, right?
Yeah,
like
early before that.
Late 80s, early 90s, he passed away. So it couldn't have been.
Maybe that's when they stopped creating new material.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. This next one you put on here, I want to let you take this. I don't know what this is.
I did put this on here. We don't have to read the whole thing. I'll just read the summarization. But basically, remember a while ago we were talking about our Magnolia episode. Yeah. When I was like, it's a really weird movie. Something happens at the end. I'm not going to tell you. Well, I'm going to tell you now. I'm going to spoil it for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, 2 hours and 45 minutes into this long ass film, frogs start falling from the sky.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this article is by Aurora Amidon, and this is published on January 22nd, 2020. And again, this movie is pretty old. I want to say maybe early 2000s. So this article is pretty recent
Okay.
compared to like when this movie actually came out. But this is from filmschoolrejects.com. So just to summarize this whole article, I'll post the whole article in our show notes if you guys want to read the entire thing, but it's kind of long. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about it. So Paul Thomas Anderson is the director of this film, Magnolia, which explores the theme that life is devoid of coincidences, emphasizing connections between seemingly unrelated characters in the San Fernando Valley. The movie masterfully unveils these connections, suggesting a carefully orchestrated mosaic leading to a significant moment. The pivotal scene, which involves a single frog falling from the sky, a nod to Exodus 8, the Old Testament, which we talked about a little earlier. This biblical reference symbolizes divine interventions and surrendering to faith. The frog's impact on characters like the police officer, Jim Curing, quiz kid Donnie Smith, the TV personality Frank T.J. Mackey, played by Tom Cruise, prompts personal growth and acceptance to the past. Magnolia ultimately conveys that events have purpose, encouraging characters to move forward from their traumas and embrace the positive outcomes. So yes, like the one frog falls, and then like it just like the sky opens up, and then all these frogs just like
Oh
start
God,
falling
I
from
can
the sky.
hear it.
And it is the most creepy, eerie scene, but
Dude,
it's so fascinating.
Do they like when they like fall and they hit somebody or they hit the ground? Do they like splatter?
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're like falling into the pool, and they're like, you know, hitting people's windshields, and like the whole ending is like a perfect storm of events that kind of lead up to this like climax of this movie. And I remember the first time I saw it, like my brother lent me this movie, and he's like, you need to watch this movie. I know it's kind of long, but just wait for the ending. It's so good. And like, yeah, it is kind of long and drawn out, but if you can hold out for that like icing on the cake at the very end, it's
fucking weird. It's so funny that this has come up twice.
Yeah. So
This
that means you
fucking
have to
movie.
watch. That means you have to watch it. But now I ruined the ending for you.
That's fine. That's something to look forward to. Maybe I'll just skip to the ending. No, I can't do that because you said it all accumulates at the end.
Yeah, you gotta watch all of the shit that kind of adds all up to it. I love that scene, and I love watching the movie just for that scene at the end. But that's about it as far as that movie. And yeah, basically the whole spiel of that movie is that things happen. They aren't coincidences.
But the police officer is played by John C. Reilly.
Oh yeah, it's a what's the word?
Like a star-studded cast.
Star-studded cast. Yeah,
Wow.
John C. Reilly, William H. Macy, Tom Cruise, Julianne Moore. Philip Seymour Hoffman? There's tons of people.
Neil Flynn and Melora Walters highlighted also.
Mm-hmm. I told you, I remember like working a desk job, and after I saw this movie, I should have been working at my desk job, but I was like looking up like an analysis for like what do the frogs mean? I want to know I want to know what it all means.
Yeah.
Tying it all together. Yeah. Yeah. So
Oh man.
I've always been this nuts with going down rabbit holes on bullshit that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. But anyway, so talking a little bit about Harry Potter, because I totally forgot that chocolate frogs. Do you remember the chocolate frogs in Harry Potter?
I do.
So they were very popular. They were a wizarding sweet made from chocolate in the form of a frog. They came with a collectible card of a famous witch or wizard in each pack. The frogs were made of 70% crocao.
Ew. Crocao.
Crocao. Presumably, this substance was what allowed them to magically act like an actual frog. Chocolate frogs also came in a white chocolate variety. A popular game for Hogwarts students was to let a bunch of chocolate frogs hop around and to grab the normal ones while avoiding the white ones. At the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, chocolate frogs are sold at Honeydukes, and each frog contains one of the 4 founding members of Hogwarts. And there's a whole Wikipedia page on harrypotter.fandom.com, and we'll link that below if you guys want to go read more about the frogs. There's so much lore about the chocolate frogs in the Harry Potter world, but I'm not even gonna go down that hole.
They tried to pull a fast one, but I see what they did there while avoiding the white ones, like the white chocolate. Like white chocolate's not good. I see what you did there. I don't appreciate it. I love white chocolate
because you love your white chocolate.
Yeah. A couple other films I pulled off of that list that I like or I've seen. Like I don't claim to have seen many movies, but Invaders from Mars. Weren't you and I just talking about this movie?
Yeah.
1986, a young boy fights aliens who makes his teacher swallow frogs. I love Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Amazing, amazing music. From 2000, Everett and Daimler find a frog in Pete's clothing, so they think that the river sirens have turned him into a toad, and they put him in a box and take care of him.
Oh.
Rango 2011. Rango is a pet chameleon who gets lost in the desert where he encounters desert animals, including some toads. The Sound of Music from 1965. The bratty children tried to scare away their new governess. The hell's her name?
Julie Andrews?
Thank you. By putting toads in her pockets. And The Wicker Man, which we mentioned from 1973. A pharmacist puts a small toad in a girl's mouth to cure her sore throat.
Was E.T. on that list? I loved that scene in E.T. with like the frogs and then like shit just goes crazy.
I don't remember that.
They come back to life or whatever. Right?
Oh, in the biology class, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't put that in there.
Yeah. I
It
think
wasn't
that
on
might
the
have been
list.
It wasn't on that list? Okay. That's just one that I remembered off the cuff. Like,
Yeah.
I always loved that scene.
All right. Let's wrap it up with some fun little things here. So I guess there is a county fair in Calvernus. It's called the Calvernus County Fair and Jumping Frog Jubilee. Every year, thousands of frog jockeys leap at the chance to win the World Frog Jumping Competition and $5,000.
Wow.
There is this will all be linked, and it's all about frogs.org. Another link here is called Frogland. It's a frog page, especially for kiddos. It has facts, pictures, and games. There is frogs.org. It's the Amphibian Research Center, and it was established as a center dedicated to the research and conservation of Australia's unique frogs. Charles Borgert's Wonderful World of Frogs, and Croaks, a sample of a variety ribbits of North American frogs. And lastly, Save the Frogs, SaveTheFrogs.com. Concerned about disappearing frogs, they are often thought of as a bellwether to indicate environmental change. But I suggest going to SaveTheFrogs.com. Check it out. You can go to the site and become a member, or you can just donate. There's a message from their founder. That's what we got for you today.
Save the frogs, everybody.
Save the frogs, everybody.
Frogs, everybody. All right. We're ready to wrap this bitch up in a pretty little bow. So that's all we have for today. But just a reminder that you guys can check out all the sources pertaining to today's episode via the hero page link in our show notes. And thanks again to our patrons and Palmiers for creating this app and keeping creators like us organized, because Lord knows we need it.
Yeah, if you would like to support our Patreon, you can head over to patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast and become one of our neighbors for as little as $1. With the seedling tier is $1, and it gets you access to our patron-only polls where you get to weigh in on what topics you think we should talk about next. It also gets you our monthly calendar so you can see what topics we have coming up for the month, and you get a little welcome shout out on the show, so you get to hear your name on the show.
Yeah.
We have a $3 lavender bud tier. It gets you our show notes for each episode, and I'm dying in an aesthetically pleasing PDF. After our posts, if there are any extra tidbits or behind the scenes info pertaining to any of our episodes, we'll post those along with a blog post of the extra photos. It gives you access to specifically curated Spotify playlists. We have created Spotify playlists for our WMSR episodes, as well as production dream playlists for our song-episodes and more. We have a $5 Lilac tier that gets you access into our private Facebook community where we host monthly live streams, plus access to our Discord server where we host our monthly watch parties. Also on the Discord server, you can jump in on the discussion with other Magnolia Street neighbors via the various interesting channels and threads.
Roses. You can get access for $8 to extra audiovisual content such as a once-a-month full-length video episode, unlimited bonus videos, uncut footage, cutting room floor footage, bloopers, outtakes, meditations, exclusive interviews, old home videos from the vault, spell or ritual videos, etc. Plus bonus content to coincide with our song-episodes such as full-length demo streams of our original Practical Magic-inspired music, plus lyric sheets, guitar chords, original scratch demos, bonus video performances of our songs, and more. And lastly, we have the $15 $1 wisteria vine. Just like a wisteria vine, there's a way for you to stay connected with us, the Stinas. In this tier, we invite you to join our private Marco Polo video messaging group. The app is totally free for Android and iOS. Sign up with your phone number and email or email, and we will help you do the rest. This is a great way to chat with each other in a more intimate group setting, face-to-face, via video recording. We love to show each other our pets, our gardens, anything else you guys like to share with us, and it's just nice to be a little more intimate over there. So just a reminder that the higher the tier you sign up under, the more rewards you get, because you get all the rewards of the tiers below it. You can upgrade or downgrade or even cancel at any time. So to support the podcast, head to patreon.com/Magnolia Street Podcast. All right. So we do have some merch. We have some awesome designs on our Teespring shop, which you can access through the Koji link in our Instagram bio. And you can get our original designs on pretty much any kind of apparel you want, as well as other items like coffee mugs, stickers, tote bags, and water bottles. And if you see something on there, or if you don't see something on there that you want, just send us a DM, let us know, and we'll try to make that happen for you. We do have an upcoming event. The Stinas will be taking over Salem, Massachusetts, Friday the 13th, this October, from 9 to midnight. We are hosting a midnight margarita meetup. We have exclusive merch for this event. A season 1 poster and a t-shirt will be available for purchase, which we would be happy to sign for you at the event. So you can check out the purchase link. It's up on our Teespring right now. You can get that link in our Koji bio on our Instagram, and we'll also link it in our show notes. We did tease a small video clip of the poster, so if you want a little sneak peek of that, it's, you know, down on our feed somewhere. You might have to sift through some stuff to find out. But
there's a picture of the poster up there now too.
Oh, right, that's right. We did a little additional ad. That's so cute. Yeah, but these will only be available for a limited time through November 1st. So if you want those, you can jump on them, because they're not going to be there that long. So that's just to commemorate our 1-year anniversary of being a podcast. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so be sure to RSVP to our event via the Eventbrite link, which is where you can also find the update about the location and any other information you need to know pertaining to that event. And yeah, again, the link is in our show notes, in our Koji link, and our Instagram. Space is limited, so definitely RSVP at your earliest convenience so we can let the
venue
know. Yes.
Thank you. I definitely want to order the toad, the drink Jillian concocted in Book of Magic.
Yes.
I'm doing it. Who's with me? Somebody be with me.
I'm with you.
Yay!
I'm with you.
All right.
Wouldn't it be funny if everybody just started ordering the toad and nobody actually ordered our signature drink that we had
Rob's gonna
work on for months?
Rob's gonna be like, "What the fuck, God? What'd you do?" All right. There are some additional ways you can help support our podcast that don't cost you any money. We would really appreciate if you are listening to us on Spotify, that you give us a star rating. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please give us a written review so we can share it. We love sharing those as a review crew on Instagram. If you are on Instagram, we really appreciate any reposts or blurbs about our podcast. Make sure to tag us at Magnolia Street Podcast in your feed, post, or stories, and share them with your practical magic loving friends.
There you go.
Yep.
Dude, this episode was meaty, and I am so in love with the things that we uncovered. The resurrection spell?
I know. This one has so many
Heqet,
connections.
the
Yes.
goddess?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's all connected. And there are no rules. It's all connected.
There are no rules. It's all connected. We need a t-shirt that says commoner and charlatan.
Yeah.
Put that on the list. All right. Are we ready to close this bitch out?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, man. So I'm Justina.
I'm Kristina.
And
we'll see you next time. At that house down the street. At that house on Magnolia Street. Would you go down to Magnolia Street with